Listening Library, in association with Red Sky Entertainment, presents Avalon, Web of Magic, Volume 1, Circles in the Stream. Read for you by Mandy Moore.
Chapter 1. Thunder rocked across the skies, sending the three dogs into fits of howling. 12-year-old Emily Fletcher tried to calm them. It's just a storm. But no matter what she did, they slunk low to the ground, growling and whimpering. Usually they were happy to play in the backyard with her, a daily break from their kennels at the Pet Palace. But this afternoon, they ignored the ball Emily rolled out to them, pointing their noses instead toward the forested slopes in the distance. Emily followed their gaze. Her eyes fell over the expanse of forests that met the playing fields and parkland that bordered their property. She had been in Stonehill, Pennsylvania for 8 weeks, and although she'd been an avid hiker back home in Colorado, she had not yet begun to explore these woods. For one thing, she had no friends. For another, she'd been way too busy. Helping her mom set up Stonehill Animal Hospital and the Pet Palace Animal Hotel had pretty much taken up all her time. Not that Emily really minded. She loved animals, had a magic touch with them, her mom always said, and being busy kept her from being lonely. Sometimes she barely remembered her parents were now officially divorced, and she was thousands of miles away from everything and everyone she knew. Sometimes she remembered all too well. She ran a hand through her long, curly hair. Animals can sense drops in air pressure before people can, she reminded herself. That must be why the dogs are acting so strange. Lightning flashed, splitting the sky with jagged forks. Jellybean, the Harrison family's Dalmatian, began to leap up and down, barking. Pumpkin, Mrs. Stallings' little white poodle, cowered, and Emily tensed in spite of herself. "Okay," she said, giving up. "Let's get inside." The dogs barreled through the side door of the small barn that Emily and her mother had converted into the animal hotel. Emily herded the dogs into their kennels. Biscuit, Mr. Franklin's golden retriever, walked forward, turned backward to growl, then circled, moving forward a few more steps before turning to growl again. Jellybean threw himself at Emily and yelped loudly. "What's wrong, guys?" Emily asked. She stroked Jellybean's shoulder and gently pushed him back into his kennel. "What's gotten into you?" Biscuit pointed her nose up to the ceiling and howled. In the back room, a cockatiel screamed. Something else screamed. Emily froze, stock still. What was that? She waited, her ears straining. Behind her, the dogs were near panic. It came again, the sound ripping through her like broken glass. Emily cried out. An animal was in trouble. Instinctively, she zoomed into crisis mode. She'd been around animals ever since she turned 5, the year her mom, Dr. Carolyn Fletcher, first went into veterinary practice. Emily had assisted in several emergencies. A dog that had been shot by a hunter, a cat hit by a car. She'd seen the blood in the bones and the suffering in the animal's eyes, and she hadn't flinched. Emily ran out of the barn and into the main building that housed the clinic. Her mother would need her help. She raced into the foyer and slipped on the wet floor. She looked down and gasped. Blood. Lightning flared, suddenly illuminating her reflection in the hallway mirror, as if she was a ghost. She stood there, holding her breath. Shouting from the emergency room made her turn. She heard her mother yell, "Put it down here!" There were sounds of scuffling. Men were shouting, and an animal roared in defiance. Each scream tore through Emily, making her flinch. Still, she pushed her way inside, into pandemonium. "Hold it still!" Carolyn ordered. 2 policemen struggled to hold a wriggling tarp down on the operating table. A razor-clawed paw swept out from under the tarp, raking down a uniform sleeve and breaking one man's grasp. The other man slammed the animal down hard. "Emily, get the hypodermic!" Carolyn shouted over the animal's yowls. Emily remained frozen and watched as her mother drew back the tarp. Carolyn's gasp stuck in her throat. "What did this to you?" It was a cat, an enormous cat, and it was burned badly, Only small patches of its leopard-spotted fur remained. Everywhere else, the skin was oozing blood. One of the cat's eyes was swollen shut. "Oh no, oh no," Emily thought she heard herself saying over and over. "Emily, move it!" The animal twisted in Carolyn's arms and took a mad swipe, ripping the sleeve of her tunic. Instinctively, she jerked back, grabbing her arm. The cat struggled to stand, but its paws slipped in the pools of its own blood. Emily stared at the awful wounds. Burns everywhere, and, on one flank, a set of deep claw marks. But what mesmerized her was the green glow that seemed to emanate, shimmering, almost bubbling from the burned flesh. Didn't anyone else notice? Emily wondered. "Emily!" her mom shouted. "I need your help, do you hear me?" Emily looked up. Shaking, she fumbled around the supply cabinet for a hypodermic, trying to get it out of its wrapping. Somehow she managed to measure out the dose of tranquilizer her mother called out to her. The cat twisted hard, letting out an awful cry. The pain lanced deep into Emily's chest, making her scream. The needle fell to the floor and shattered. The cat was up on its feet, snarling. It turned to face Emily. Glaring through its one good eye, it bared razor teeth and crouched to strike. "Keep away from it!" one of the cops shouted. Emily moved forward slowly, as if in a dream. The cat looked straight at her. A hard glint of steel flashed from its gold-green eyes, and Emily felt a rush of feelings wash over her. Rage, hate, pain, fear, and something else. Something Emily recognized instantly. Loss. Emily was overwhelmed by a sadness and emptiness unlike anything she'd ever known. She stared at the cat. "It's all right. You're with friends. We want to help you." Had she spoken out loud? The cat's expression calmed, the feral glow fading from its eyes as its muscles relaxed. Emily looked up to see her mother pulling the needle from the cat's side. The cat slid to the table, fighting to keep eye contact with Emily. Leaning her head in close, Emily heard a whisper, a single word. "Home." A hand was on her shoulder, pulling her back. It was her mom, her grip firm but gentle. "Thank you, officers. We've got everything under control now." "You're sure you'll be okay, doctor?" one of them asked. "This is what we do," she replied, pulling on surgical gloves. "Where did you find this animal?" The older of the two policemen shook his head. "We didn't find it. She did." He jerked his thumb toward the far corner of the room. "Out at the Ravenswood Preserve." For the first time, Emily noticed the dark-haired girl who stood watching, black eyes wide against tan skin. Where had she come from? Carolyn turned to the girl. Any sign of what might have done this to her? No. The girl's long, dark hair fell over her face as she edged toward the door. "You did the right thing calling for help," Carolyn assured her. "Yeah." The girl was out the door in a flash. "Emily, get scrubbed. Rachel's gone for the day, so you're assisting. You know the burn drill. Soak, clean, and cover." The officers had left, and her mom was all business now. But Emily was frozen again. Home. She was sure she'd heard it, but who had said it? Emily willed her legs to move. Her hip hit the side of the exam table, making it spin on its wheels. I can't, she faltered. Carolyn was already dousing sterile bandages with ice-cold alcohol and laying them over the worst of the burns. Emily looked from her mom to the cat, then stumbled out of the room in a daze. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she walked down the hallway and out onto the hospital's covered back porch. What had happened to her in there? She had wanted to help, she really had. How could she have frozen up like that, at a critical moment with an animal's life on the line? Never before had she acted like that, so clumsy and powerless. She hated it. She walked into the backyard, trying to calm her breathing. She caught a glimpse of the black-haired girl running across the fields toward the forest. Something ran alongside her. It looked like a big gray dog. Emily shook her head, thinking about those awful burns. What could have hurt an animal like that? And what kind of animal was it anyway? It looked like a leopard, but leopards didn't live in the Pennsylvania woods. Out at the Ravens Wood Preserve. Is that where it came from? Suddenly, Emily shivered as a strange feeling swept over her. It felt like something horrible was approaching. Something evil. Boo! With a shriek, Emily wheeled around and found herself staring into the laughing face of Kevin Deacon, the 15-year-old who worked part-time at the hospital cleaning out cages, feeding and caring for the animals. Kevin, you idiot! Don't ever do that again! Kevin just laughed some more. I'm not joking! Emily turned away so he wouldn't see how upset she really was. Kevin's mischievous smile faded. I heard some awful noises a minute ago, he said. Some animal hurt pretty bad, huh? He could be such a jerk sometimes, but Emily had to admit that he did care about animals. Yeah. Your mom's a great vet. I should have... yeah. Just go away and leave me alone. I saw that girl running away as I rode up. What was she doing here? She found the animal. A cat. It's hurt badly. Emily sniffed, calming down a little. That girl's really weird. What do you mean? Emily asked. She lives in the woods, at the Ravenswood Preserve. She lives there? Wow. Emily's eyes widened. Yeah, well, if the town council has anything to say about it, Ravenswood is going to be shut down. Why? Emily was puzzled. It's dangerous, Kevin said. A shock of sandy hair fell across his forehead, and his blue eyes sparkled as he edged closer to her. It's haunted. Emily laughed. Haunted? That is so juvenile. He shrugged. Hey, the place used to be amazing. Old man Gardner collected all kinds of animals. We used to go there as kids, feed koala bears, peacocks, even monkeys. Now no one goes there. They say a monster roams the woods. Emily snorted. Come on, Kevin, get a grip. Kevin glanced back at the clinic. Look, I don't know what happened to the cat in there, but from the screams and the look on your face, it's bad, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure out that it was probably attacked by the same thing that's already killed a couple of dogs. In spite of herself, Emily shivered. Why don't they just talk to that Gardner guy who owns the place? She asked. He disappeared, Kevin said in a whisper. Just upped and went one day. Vanished. Spooky, huh? So who takes care of all the animals? His caretaker, I guess. Some old woman. People say she's a witch. Kevin, stop it, Emily shook her head. There are no such things as witches. She was getting goosebumps. My friend Tyler saw a ghost about 3 weeks ago, right near the rocking stone. The what? The rocking stone, he said scornfully. It's been here forever. It's an Indian monument, like a lighthouse for ghosts. Emily was trying not to let his ridiculous stories get to her. Something's in those woods, Kevin said slowly. That place should be condemned. What would happen to the animals? Emily asked. But Kevin was already on his way into the clinic to begin his chores. Emily was silent. She looked out to the west where the dark clouds had broken. The sun was setting behind the forest, sending up a fiery glow. I don't believe in witches, monsters, or ghosts. I'm not afraid. But somehow, she was. Chapter 2. Emily found her mother in the lab, examining something under a microscope. At the sound of her daughter's footsteps, Carolyn looked up, concerned. Emily paused. How is... She stared at her sneakers. She couldn't complete the question, afraid she'd already seen the answer on her mother's drawn face. She's alive, Carolyn told her. Heavily sedated, but stable. Emily burst into tears. I'm so sorry. Shh, okay. It's okay, sweetheart, Carolyn said, wrapping her arms around Emily. I didn't help you. You needed me and I froze. Fresh tears ran down her face. Honey, it was pretty intense. Carolyn reassured her. Emily pushed away from her mother and squared her shoulders. I need to see the cat. Okay, Carolyn told her. Emily walked to the door of the recovery room and, after a moment's hesitation, opened it. Inside the room was quiet, the shades drawn, the walls lit softly by a small lamp. The cat lay in a spacious cage. An intravenous needle was taped to its shoulder, connected by a tube to a bag that Emily knew contained fluids and antibiotics. The cat was almost entirely wrapped in bandages. Its breathing was labored and shallow. That green glow was still there, faintly visible under the bandages. She knelt down beside the cage. "You're hurt so bad," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't help. Please don't die, please." As Emily spoke, the cat's breathing slowed and became more even. Its one good eye was halfway open and looking at her. "I'm right here. I won't leave you," Emily promised. The cat closed its eye and fell back asleep. Carolyn walked into the room and knelt down next to Emily. She looked the cat over. "She's sleeping. Breathing's regular, that's good." Emily gave Carolyn a quick smile. She pointed to a patch of spotted fur on one of its rear paws. "What is she, a leopard?" "I don't think so," Carolyn answered. "She's too small. Maybe a margay or some unusual kind of ocelot." Emily stared at it. "What kind of creature could have made these marks?" she asked, flashing on Kevin's monsters. "I might have guessed a bear," Carolyn mused, "but only black bears live around here, largely vegetarian and almost never aggressive. Of course, we don't know what other kinds of bears might live on that preserve." She shook her head. "But that still doesn't explain those burns." "I've never seen anything like it," Carolyn continued. "The burns seem to spread out from the claw wounds, but the only way that could be is if—" She shook her head again. "If the claws were toxic somehow. Or—" "What?" Emily asked. Carolyn sighed. "The burns may not be accidental. They could have been inflicted by someone." Emily gasped in horror. "What kind of person would do that?" "It may not be that, Em. There may have been some toxic dumping in that preserve." Emily's eyes widened. "What if other animals out there are in trouble? We should help them." "Oh, no, you don't," her mom said sternly. "Don't even think about going into those woods until we find out what or who caused those wounds." She stood and straightened her lab coat. "I was preparing some skin samples to send to the university for analysis. I want to stay down here tonight with her." Carolyn frowned. Emily pressed on. "Burn victims benefit if they're surrounded by people who care about them." Her mother smiled. "All right, I suppose it wouldn't hurt." Emily smiled back. That night, Emily dragged her sleeping bag, a careful selection of stuffed animals, and 2 pillows into the clinic's recovery room and set herself up as close to the cage as she could. "I brought you Mr. Snuffles," she said softly, holding up the orange lion. "See, he's a cat too." The cat lay sleeping, breathing calmly. Emily opened the cage and placed Mr. Snuffles far to the side, careful not to touch the injured animal's bandages. Gently, she stroked a patch of uncovered fur on its shoulder. "That's strange," she thought. There was an odd bump behind the shoulder blade. Could it be a fracture? No, her mom was too good a vet to miss anything like that. And the cat didn't even twitch when Emily touched the bump. It must be something else. Something normal for this cat. She closed the cage and snuggled down with her other stuffed friends. She was happy to be doing something for the cat at last. She would watch her all night. But the cat seemed at peace now, and Emily found it harder and harder to keep her eyes open. Finally, she couldn't fight the exhaustion anymore. As her eyes closed, she imagined she heard a thin, distant voice say, "Thank you." Chapter 3. The land gradually sloped uphill, and after a while, Emily had to stop and catch her breath. She cautiously looked around. Nothing seemed remotely haunted about this forest. It was just trees, undergrowth, and lots of shade. Just like hiking in the Rockies back home. Her old home, she corrected herself. We've got to find a trail. Her voice fell flat in the stillness of the woods. As if in answer, Pumpkin pushed on straight through the underbrush. Emily bent forward with one arm up as a shield. Or we could go your way. Branches whipped at her legs and scratched her face, and then they were through and onto a narrow but well-worn path. Good job, Emily exclaimed. Pumpkin, are you part bloodhound? Pumpkin yapped and tugged at the leash. Emily allowed the poodle to pull her briskly up the path. Thick trees and lush plant growth surrounded her. It was hard to take Kevin's stories seriously as she breathed in the sweet smells of the forest, but it was also hard to forget the terrible burns on the cat and her mother's fears that someone might be in these woods, hurting animals. The cool air turned damp on her skin and she shivered. She could no longer hear the other dogs barking. She hoped that didn't mean they'd caught the ferret, or worse, that something had caught them. Come on, she told Pumpkin. Find Biscuit and Jellybean. Pumpkin followed the trail. On either side, the woods seemed to be getting darker and more ominous. Emily was straining to hear any signs of the runaway dogs. The rustle of leaves made her look around nervously. Light and shadows played in and out of the trees. Twisted, overhanging branches seemed to reach for her. The trail led around the side of a hill, curved to the left, and then spilled out onto a dirt road. Emily slid down the incline, piling right into Pumpkin. She looked up. A large stone arch with twin iron gates was in front of her. On either side of the arch stretched a tall stone wall. The gates were closed. Emily stared in dismay. The dogs could be anywhere. There was a sign on the wall next to the arch. She walked over to read it. Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve. Open 11 a.m. to... Duh. Emily giggled as she realized that vines had grown over the last letters on the sign and arranged themselves to look like an H. She pulled the vines aside and read again. Open 11 a.m. to dusk. Please don't feed the animals and stay on the paths. Garbage in, garbage out policy. $200 fine for littering. Wow, this is it. A real wildlife preserve. Emily glanced at her watch. 11:30 a.m., but the gate was closed. Then she remembered what Kevin said about the old man disappearing. Maybe there was no one to keep the place open now, except the caretaker who happened to be a witch. Ruff! The sound came from the other side of the wall. She grabbed the iron bars and jumped up on the gate, trying to peer farther into the estate. No sign of any dogs. Ruff! The dogs must have gotten through somehow. Get back here, she called sternly, but there was no response. She was starting to feel queasy. Maybe we could find a way in somewhere else. Creak. The sudden sound of metal on metal startled her as the heavy gate began to swing open. She hung on. You have visitors, she said aloud nervously. She jumped off the gate onto the dirt road on the other side. Jellybean! Biscuit! She really hoped they'd come bounding out of the woods so she wouldn't have to go in after them. But neither dog appeared. Emily drew in a breath. What if whatever had mauled the cat was still here? Hadn't Kevin said that neighborhood dogs that had wandered in had been... No, Emily shook her head. She was so not going there. She'd find the dogs, and they'd be fine. There seemed to be two ways to go, the main road or a smaller path that led off to the left. Which way? Pumpkin pulled her along the smaller path. Her heart began to beat faster. The woods closed around the path, deeper and thicker. The air smelled of damp earth. She called again, Biscuit! Jellybean! She thought she heard a few woofs in the distance, but she couldn't tell which direction they were coming from. She had a fleeting sense that something was following her. A soft rustling startled her. She turned to her right and thought she saw the strangest thing, a white mist through the trees. A ghost? She shivered. There was a loud squawk, and a flash of green and red and purple flew between the tree branches. Tropical bird, she thought, certainly not native to these woods. When she looked back, the mist was gone. Must have been a trick of light, she told herself. Arf! Pumpkin pointed to the right. Emily looked and saw a shadow move between the trees. Who's there? She called out, her pulse pounding in her ears. This was getting really creepy. A rustling in the undergrowth startled her, and she whirled around to see the back of a very large animal as it disappeared from view. What was that? A moose? No, stupid, there's no moose in Pennsylvania. Oh yeah, right. This is a wildlife preserve. Who knows what kind of animals are here? In fact, who even knew she was here? She was all alone in the haunted woods. Okay, she told herself, calm down, don't panic. As she led Pumpkin down the other path, visions of haunted woods and the old witch who lived there sprang up like those Grimm's fairy tales that had scared her when she was young. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Turning around, Emily saw the white mist again. It was moving, snaking through the trees toward her. Oh no, this is not good. She ran up a little rise, then stopped to look over her shoulder. The wavering white mist was there, getting thicker and closer. She scooped up Pumpkin and started to walk faster. Then, she broke into a run. She was just letting herself be spooked by what Kevin had said. But the cat was real. She was starting to panic. She had trouble catching her breath, but she couldn't stop running. Help! Help! She cried out, but her screams were swallowed by the dark and hungry forest. She was in deep woods now. She stumbled over tree roots, pushed through the undergrowth. Turning her head, she saw the white mist behind her. For a split second, Emily froze. She willed her legs to move, to run. Turning back, she tripped over something and did a faceplant into the ground. There was a yelp, and she realized what she had fallen over. Jelly Bean! Her heart leaped. He was totally fine. Nothing had mauled him. A second later, Biscuit came trotting up and licked her face. Relief flooded through her. Bad dogs! She scolded them half-heartedly and stopped. There, under a natural archway formed by trees, was a wolf. Its fur was silver fading to white. Its eyes, rimmed in charcoal, were warm gold. It sat perfectly still, staring back at Emily. Then it stood and turned to walk through the archway. Jellybean and Biscuit followed. Hey, wait! Emily called. She probably should be scared, but she wasn't. With Pumpkin close at her side, Emily walked through the archway. The wolf was nowhere to be seen, but something else definitely was. Beyond the archway stood the largest boulder she had ever seen. She craned her neck to look at the stone tower, following it up to the jagged peak that pointed to the sky. It was so tall, she wondered that she hadn't noticed it, looming up above the trees. Wow, Emily breathed. It's the rocking stone. So Kevin was right about one thing anyway. The rock was amazing. Lines of quartz glistened all around the sides, catching the sunlight. Look what you guys found, she exclaimed to the dogs. She stepped around the rock and saw what the boulder was hiding. The rocking stone hung out over a glade with a pond. The glade was surrounded by a perfect circle of tall firs. At the far side, a rippling stream flowed into the pond, and a small bridge arched gracefully across the water. In contrast, the pond was absolutely still, shimmering like a sky-blue mirror, except where willows brushed the water with the tips of their flowing branches. Songbirds trilled in the treetops. Golden sunlight poured through the trees. This was the most beautiful place she'd ever seen. Ruff-choo! Pumpkin sneezed. She had stopped to sniff something. Looking down, Emily saw a clump of incredible flowers, small fuzzy puffs of every imaginable color. She bent down and picked one of the flowers. It looked like a sparkly dandelion. She blew on it, and tiny glittering tufts danced away on the breeze. Emily felt like an explorer discovering a new world. Suddenly, 3 animals stepped out of the trees. Emily stopped and held her breath. They were small, like miniature versions of deer. They bent their heads gracefully to drink from the pond, then looked up and scampered away. A bright red bird, could that really be a scarlet macaw? Flapped from a treetop to a lower branch where it joined another bird, this one purple and orange. These creatures seemed so peaceful, so comfortable in their surroundings, not even bothered by the dogs. Surely there could be no dangerous predator around. Slowly, so as not to startle the animals, Emily walked to a flat rock at the edge of the pond and sat down. She pulled off her sneakers and socks, stuck her feet in the water, and splashed her toes lazily. Her reflection swirled in the water. It felt so refreshing, clean and cold, like a mountain pool. She dashed some on her face, then flicked water at Biscuit. With a bark, Jellybean took a flying leap and landed in the pond, sending water cascading up all around. Emily threw water at Pumpkin, who ran around barking happily. And the water turned pink. Emily bolted up. Bright colors, orange, purple, pink, began to bubble up, sending soft circles out across the pool. The colors deepened, becoming darker and richer. Emily jerked her feet out of the water, even though it didn't feel hot. Then she saw something under the surface, glowing. Leaning over, she stuck her hand in the water, reaching. The tips of her fingers bumped against something small, cold, and hard in the wet clay. Her hand closed around the object, and her stomach lurched. She felt as if she had just taken the first drop of Gigantor, the huge wooden roller coaster that used to terrify her. There was a loud rustling in the forest. Terrified, Emily scrambled to her feet, looking around. The dogs pressed tightly against her legs, whimpering. What was happening? Wind whipped across the glade, sending up small eddies of dried leaves and dirt. 3, 4, then 6 tiny whirlpools spiraled and twirled across the grass. One spun right by Emily's legs, and out of the corner of her eye, she thought she saw a figure. A figure made of twigs, dirt, and leaves? A sound buzzed from the swirling debris. What? Another mini tornado twirled by, sending tiny pebbles and bits of dirt flying. Squinting her eyes against the dust, Emily stood stock still as a third little whirlwind spun crookedly by her leg. Beware, it hummed. The shrieking of the wind grew louder. The spinning figures flew apart, scattering twigs, leaves, and dirt across the glade. Tree limbs snapped and came crashing to the ground. Emily sank to her knees, wrapping her arms tightly around the dogs. Frantically, she looked about for a place, any place, to hide. Then she saw it, and her heart stopped. A dark purple shape loomed up through the trees, making its way straight for her and the dogs. She whirled around and saw the ghostly mist flow from between 2 trees and seep into the glade. It was about to envelop her, and there was nothing she could do. She was trapped. Her heart was in her throat. She couldn't breathe. The mist fell silently over Emily and the dogs, covering them in a soft blanket. The dogs shivered. She hugged them close, soundlessly willing them to keep quiet. Through the misty veil, she saw a shadow move past. It looked like a giant dark purple bear. Emily didn't know why, but she suddenly wasn't frightened. She allowed herself to breathe. Boom! The ground rocked. Something fell out of the sky, something big. The earth trembled from the impact. The wind kicked up again, as if blasted by the beating of great wings. The air itself seemed to twist, a wobbling spiral that made Emily sick to her stomach. She sensed animal cries of terror. Creatures were frantically fleeing through the brush. Emily didn't move. The thing that fell from the sky was some kind of animal, no, creature. She could feel it probing, searching for prey. Whatever it was no bear. She was sure of that. It was bigger, more dangerous. It moved slowly around the glade, snorting and growling. Emily huddled in the thick mist with the dogs tight against her. She was so frightened she could hardly think. The dogs were wriggling and starting to whine. Trembling, she carefully pulled out the group leash and, one by one, hooked up each dog. "Shh," she whispered. But she fumbled the last hook and it closed with an audible snap. The thing that fell from the sky whirled and came straight toward them. Emily's heart pounded like a sledgehammer. Even through the misty veil, she could see the faint outlines of long, sharp claws, monstrous fanged wings, and red-hot glowing eyes. And she could smell it too. Something rotten. She was going to gag. A terrifying howl made her cover her ears. She closed her eyes as the blood-curdling scream made the dogs whimper. There was a beating of great wings, a rush of hot air, and the creature took off, disappearing into the sky. Then, all was quiet. Emily opened her eyes and stared straight into the eyes of the silver wolf. They blazed with gold fire. She wanted to scream, but nothing came out. "Do not be afraid." She heard no sound, and yet she understood the voice perfectly. "You are safe for now." Emily blinked and shook her head. The dogs were staring at the wolf, amazingly calm, as if they too had heard the reassuring words. A tightness in her arm made her realize she had been clenching her fist all this time. She opened her hand and saw that the object she'd picked up from the water was in her palm. It was a small, rough, dark stone. She looked back to the wolf, but it had disappeared again. What had just happened? What was that thing? Without another thought, she pulled on her shoes, grabbed the leash, and ran as fast as she could, back past the rocking stone, back the way she'd come. The dogs galloped ahead, and she let them pull her along. Soon, she was back at the dirt trail and followed it to the main road out of the preserve. The farther she got from the woods, the more the whole thing felt like a dream. Ghosts weren't real. Wolves didn't talk. There were no rainbow flowers. And huge flying creatures, was that what had attacked the cat? She shuddered. Biting her lip, she sped up again, tugging on the leash. She was not going to think of any of this weirdness anymore. She was going to go straight home where she belonged. Chapter 4. Unable to locate server, please check the server name and try again. Shoot! Emily sat at her desk, staring at the computer screen. As soon as she had gotten home and cleaned herself up, she'd logged onto the internet, trying various search engines to track down information on the Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve. There were no exact matches. She couldn't ask her mom for help. She didn't want to explain about almost losing the dogs and going into the woods. She thought of emailing her dad. He was a scientist. He'd know what to do. But what would she say? "Dear Dad, having a terrific time here. Today I met some monsters and a ghost wolf, and I discovered some new flower with rainbow seeds that light up like tiny fireworks." Ha! Her dad would think she'd moved to Transylvania, not Pennsylvania. "Okay, think. If one thing doesn't work," he'd say, "then try another way." Emily began to relax. On a whim, she typed in rocking stone. A page of sites came back. Indian totems. She hit the hot link button. The site was part of a web ring dedicated to Native American legends and stories. She skimmed down the listing. There it was. The Rocking Stone. Legend of the Standing Stone. Such ancient Indian monuments were believed to be landmarks used to locate doorways to the spirit world. On a whim, she typed in Ravenswood as 2 words this time. Bingo. There it was. Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve. Emily took a breath and clicked the button on her mouse. Unable to locate server, please check the server name and try again. Ugh, another dead end. Either the link had the address wrong, or the website no longer existed. She sat back. Emily. Who are you? She walked through silver-white fog. She had an impression that animals were hiding in the swirling mist watching her. A chorus of voices called her name. Come to us, Emily. I want to see you. Please come out, she cried. The mist swirled violently, streaked with waves of colors. The voices were wiped away as a monster ripped through the misty curtain. It snarled, revealing a mouth full of dripping fangs. Rotting scales fell from its horrific face as it fixed red-hot demon eyes on her. It knew she was helpless and stupid. With a roar, it attacked. Emily bolted up in bed as her eyes flew open, her mouth agape and a silent, choked-off scream. Her poo nightlight glowed softly near the door. She fought to calm her breathing. It was only a dream. It wasn't real. Something else was glowing in the room, and it wasn't coming from the nightlight. Emily quietly slipped from her bed and padded over to the pile of clothes she had thrown off earlier. She stared. The glow was coming from the pocket of her shorts. She reached inside. A pulsing blue-green washed over her face as she pulled out the stone she had found at the glade. It felt warm and reassuring in her hand, smooth and slick to the touch. Smooth? The stone she'd plucked from the pond had been rough. She stared at it. Most of the crusty layers had vanished. The stone was shiny and looked faceted in places. The blue-green surface was shot with clear, sparkly veins of gold and silver. She turned it over and over. How could she not have noticed how pretty it was when she found it? It felt magical. Ridiculous, she snorted. She sat holding the stone, looking at it for answers. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't think of anything that didn't sound completely insane. Maybe it was radioactive, or part of a meteor, but it felt so right. More strange things had happened to Emily today than in the whole rest of her life. She hated things she couldn't explain. Everything had a scientific explanation, didn't it? Okay, so what really had happened? She knew what she had to do. Regardless of what might be in those woods, she was going back to that glade to find answers for herself. The sun had risen, but the dew still sparkled on the grass. It was going to be another beautiful day. Emily, up and out early, walked across the park and playing fields, her long shadow stretching ahead of her as she followed it westward. It fell to her right when she turned up the main road to the Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve. As she approached the iron gate, she hesitated. What was she doing? Last time she'd had to go in there. She'd had no choice. This time, she was going back on purpose, and she knew it might not be safe. Emily was terrified. Had she actually seen monsters in those woods? She thought of the glowing stone. Could it be radioactive? Was someone doing experiments on the animals there? She squared her shoulders. She was determined to find that glade. She'd stick to clear trails. Any sign of trouble, she'd turn back immediately. She swung the heavy iron gate open and passed through. This time, she followed the wide main road. There was no sign of the magical puff flowers, and no sign of the ghost mist either. The path turned into a pebbled driveway that sloped downward through an expansive lawn, and at the far end stood the imposing structure of an incredible mansion nestled in the woods. As Emily approached, it rose up like an ancient castle from one of her books of fairy tales. The main house was huge, and there were smaller buildings that could have been guest houses or stables. Two large front windows seemed to watch her like dark eyes. She had the oddest feeling that the house itself was alive. Why do kids always scare themselves? She wondered, giggling nervously. Then she heard the scream. Chapter 5. Ow! What was that? Someone was in pain. Ow! Ow! Frantically, Emily looked around. The high-pitched moan was coming from somewhere in the woods. Help! Emily turned and ran in the direction of the voice. She zigzagged through the trees, making her way around thorny thickets and muddy hollows. The cries were nearer now, and more distinct. Ow! Ow! Help! You're hurting me! Stop! You! Emily crashed into a small clearing and stopped, panting hard. Kneeling by a tree was a girl. She had her back toward Emily, as if doubled over in pain. Long, shiny black hair fell over her dark t-shirt. She wore black jeans and hiking boots. Are you okay? Emily gasped, out of breath. The girl turned her head, fixing startled dark eyes on Emily. It was that strange girl who'd brought the wounded cat to the clinic. What do you think you're doing here? She demanded. Emily moved back a step. You called for help, she said, confused by the girl's hostility. I did not. The girl was crouched over something. This is private property. Get out of here. Emily wasn't about to be intimidated again. And what gives you the right to be here? She shot back. I live here, she said, and Emily remembered that that's what Kevin had said about this girl. Emily tried to peer over the girl's shoulder. What's that you've got there? Nothing, she insisted, maneuvering her body between Emily and whatever she was hiding. Emily edged closer. Go home, the girl demanded, dark eyes flashing. You don't belong here. Neither do I, exclaimed a high-pitched voice. And whatever I am, I'm certainly not nothing. Ow! My leg! Owie! Ow! Emily faked to the left, then twisted around to her right. Before the other girl knew it, Emily was past her. She blinked, totally surprised. In front of her, a golden ferret writhed in pain, its foot caught in a steel trap that was way too big for its elongated, furry body. He needs help! Emily exclaimed. That's what I was trying to do, genius, the girl replied. Emily bent over to examine the ferret closer. Its fur was mostly pale gold with wisps of brown. Its feet, tail tip, and mask were darker brown. Watch out, he'll bite you, the girl warned. Cautiously, Emily reached down to find a good grip on the trap. Owie! Owie! Ow! Ah! Hold still a minute, she told the ferret. I haven't done anything yet. Oh. Emily's jaw dropped. She stared at the ferret. It can't be, but I think it's talking. Score one for you, the girl replied. Emily tried to pull apart the steel jaws, but she wasn't strong enough. The other girl reached out to help. Together, they pulled the trap open just enough for the creature to wiggle its foot free. Oh, that feels so good! I could kiss you, but I'm not even sure I have lips. Emily's head whirled. This was impossible. The ferret sat and examined its foot. What in the world am I? It asked, alarmed. I look like some kind of rodent. It stood and hobbled. Ah! How could they do this to me? Then it looked up at Emily, and its small eyes, set inside the brown mask, blinked. Hey, aren't you the one who hit me on the head with that big rock? It was a soccer ball, she corrected distractedly. Wait a minute, she was correcting a ferret. Is that some kind of formal greeting here, beating me on the head? It was an accident. What kind of world is this? Everything hurts, the ferret whined. What's he talking about? The other girl asked. You hit him? No, I mean, yes, She stopped suddenly. But that means... She sat down hard on the ground. If we can both hear him, then it must really, can it be talking? She shook her head. No way, not possible. Stop talking about me as if I'm not here, the ferret complained. He tried to walk on his wounded paw. Ow! He was obviously in pain. That snapped Emily back to reality. We've got to get him to my mom. She can fix up his leg. No way, I'm staying right here. I'm not going any... The ferret screamed and leaped onto Emily's leg, grabbing at her shirt with its claws. Emily turned. Her heart began to pound. A great silver wolf stepped out of the shadows and walked to the dark-haired girl's side. It sat down and cocked its head at Emily. It was the wolf from the glade. Hello, healer. Emily was stunned. Was that the wolf's voice in her mind? Help! It's a mist wolf! Yelled the terrified ferret. The girl was patting the wolf. You know this person? She asked it. We had an adventure, the wolf replied. What? The girl sounded hurt. Thank you for whatever you did, Emily stammered, trying to pull the panicked ferret off by his good leg. I think you, might have saved the dogs and me. How can you hear her? The other girl demanded angrily. I don't know, Emily replied. I just can. The dark-haired girl raised her hands in frustration. What's going on around here? Good question, Emily answered, shaken. What was going on in these woods? Something that was herding and hunting animals? Some weirdness that made her think animals could talk? The other girl turned and bent close to the wolf. I don't like this. I thought you only talked to me. This is unlike you, warrior, the wolf said. But it's our secret, she pleaded. She is a healer, the wolf replied calmly. Emily was shaken a little by the wolf's words. Gah! Stay away from it! It's a mist wolf! The ferret screamed, poking its head out from behind Emily's arm. Stop whining! She's not going to eat you. The dark-haired girl got to her feet, distracted from her anger and suspicion. I will leave until later, the wolf told her. The little traveler needs time. Rising, the wolf wheeled about on her haunches and padded back into the woods. Smart wolf, Emily commented. The other girl glared at her. I don't know who you think you are, but these are my secrets. Whatever. Emily felt like her circuits were overloaded. She couldn't take any more of this bizarre input. I'm taking this ferret back to the clinic. A ferret? The ferret was looking himself over in Emily's arms. Maybe my mom can figure out what it is, Emily continued. What do you mean, what it is? The other girl moved closer. Emily tried to stay calm. Animals do not talk. Well, this one does. All we need is your mom to tell everyone. The girl started pacing. She gazed in the direction where the wolf had disappeared, then looked pleadingly back at Emily. People think this place is weird enough already. You're just going to accept a ferret that talks? Could you wait, at least? The girl asked. For what? Just wait, that's all, to tell your mother, until we can figure out what this is all about. Emily stared at the girl she'd only just met. She could tell that the girl cared deeply for these woods, and for the animals that lived here. Well, my mom can set its leg anyway. Cradling the ferret gently in her arms, she started walking away. It would be faster if you go the other way. Emily stopped. What? The raven-haired girl sighed. Come on, you'll just get lost, she said, dusting off the seat of her black jeans. Fine. Emily followed the girl, and soon they were on a narrow dirt track, heading out of the preserve. The ferret lay still in the crook of Emily's arm, muttering incoherently. I'm Emily Fletcher, Emily offered. Adriane Charday. Hi, Adriane. Nice to meet you again. Yeah, Adriane said half-heartedly. Same here. Maybe it was the wrong portal, the ferret mumbled.
Maybe I should have gotten better directions. Maybe I should have just stayed home.
I didn't know there were wolves in this part of the country. Emily tried again. This is a wildlife preserve, you know, Adriane snapped. She caught herself and calmed down. Her name is Stormbringer. She is a mist wolf.
Mist wolves? What have I gotten myself into?
The ferret whined. I've never heard of mist wolves, Emily said, trying to ignore the fact that she was holding a talking ferret.
Mist wolves are legendary. Everyone's heard of them.
The ferret squirmed in Emily's arms. She's the last of her kind, Adriane said. How do you know that? She told me, Adriane answered. This is so weird. No weirder than the fact that you can hear her speak, Adriane retorted. The girls looked at each other. Just what kinds of animals are on this preserve? Emily asked incredulously. All kinds, supposedly. I haven't found any except for Storm and the cat. And now this ferret. Adriane, I think the wolf saved me yesterday, Emily said in a soft voice. I was about to be attacked by this, I don't know, animal thing. I couldn't really see it clearly, but the wolf hid me in this mist. She faltered then. It still seemed so unbelievable. You think that thing attacked the cat? Adriane asked. I don't know. Adriane took a deep breath. Look, I'm sorry I was such a jerk. I didn't want to share this with anyone. I've only known Storm for a few weeks. She's so amazing. I understand, Emily nodded. Not that I've got anyone to tell, she added under her breath. Adriane heard her anyway. What do you mean? We just moved to Stone Hill, my mom and me. I don't have any friends here.
I should have stayed in the misty moors, dumb fairy mental magic,
the ferret mumbled as the girls walked on. Noisy, isn't he? Adriane commented. Adriane, animals don't talk. Before I met Storm, I would have said the same thing.
I've got to find that portal,
the ferret yelled out. What? Both girls asked in unison.
Something is not right. I have to get back home,
the ferret exclaimed. Where do you come from? The ferret narrowed its eyes and looked around suspiciously.
I'm not talking, not saying another word.
Good, Adriane said.
Not a peep, added the ferret.
Fine, said Emily.
A ferret?
The ferret moaned. How revolting! He must be delirious, Adriane said to Emily. The girls made their way across the park grounds and into Emily's backyard. They entered the animal hospital through the back door. The ferret looked around.
Where am I?
At a place where they can take care of your leg, Emily said, depositing him on the examining table.
I don't need to be taken care of, the ferret insisted. I need to be changed out of this body. Grrr! Wait till I get my hands on those fairy mentals.
Pause, Emily reminded him. You have paws. What are fairy mentals? Adriane asked.
Uh-oh, me and my big mouth,
the ferret said, beginning to back away. He regarded them with fear in his eyes.
How do I know you're not the enemy?
The enemy? What enemy? Adriane asked. We're friends, Emily assured him. She heard footsteps approaching the room. Shh, shh, she said suddenly. Don't say a word. Just let my mother set your leg. She's a doctor. The ferret sighed.
All right. Just make it snappy. I've got to find that portal.
Quiet. The door opened, and Carolyn came in, her face drawn and pale. She smiled at Emily. Hi, Emily. What do you have there? What's wrong, Mom? Emily asked. Her heart skipped a beat. Oh no, not the cat. No, a dog was found this morning near Arrowhead Park. It didn't make it? Emily asked. Carolyn shook her head sadly. I'm afraid not. Emily looked down. Oh, hello again, Carolyn said, noticing Adriane. Aren't you the girl who found the cat the other morning? Adriane nodded. She's doing fine, thanks to your quick thinking. Smiling, Emily's mom held out her hand. I'm Carolyn Fletcher. Adriane Charday. Adriane shook her hand politely. I found this ferret up on the preserve. Emily helped me free him from a trap. A trap? Carolyn looked back at Emily. Didn't I tell you to stay out of those woods? It's not safe up there.
I agree,
the ferret exclaimed. Adriane clasped her hand over the ferret's mouth. Shut up. What? Carolyn said. What's up? With his paw, I mean. Keeping a hand over the ferret's mouth, Adriane stretched him out lengthwise. Carolyn gently felt up and down both front paws. This doesn't look bad, she said. No breaks, not even much of a wound. Lucky for him it wasn't a big trap. Emily bent over the ferret. She looked at him, then at Adriane. What the? She peered at his injured front paw. The leg was sound and straight. Must have been the other leg, she muttered, turning him over in Carolyn's hands. Emily stared in astonishment. The ferret was practically healed. She was about to tell her mother that not 30 minutes ago its leg had been broken, but she caught Adriane glaring at her. Emily remained silent. You can handle this, Em, Carolyn said, walking towards the door. Just clean the wound and bandage it. Okay, Mom, Emily said. Carolyn turned to Adriane. So, Adriane, how is it that you were on the preserve? My grandmother's the caretaker. I live with her there. Emily gave Adriane a sharp glance. Where are your parents? She asked. Emily, her mother said softly. I have parents. Adriane glared back at Emily. They're artists. They travel a lot. She looked very uncomfortable. Carolyn smiled. Well, you're welcome here any time, she said. Mom? Emily began. That dog, she faltered. What about it? Her mother prompted her. How did it... what killed it? Her mother sighed. I'd have to say that whatever attacked the cat was the same thing that killed the dog. She headed for the door. I've got to run to an appointment. I'll be home in time for dinner. The moment Carolyn was out the door, Emily whirled on Adriane. What's going on over there? What are you talking about? You live there, you must know something. Or your grandmother does. No, she doesn't. Adriane was horrified. Hurt animals are being found in those woods. Adriane blinked back tears. You think we're doing something to hurt animals? My gran loves animals. Adriane started to pace. She whirled around to face Emily. You're as bad as everyone else in this stupid town. She stalked toward the door. I'm out of here. Emily ran after her. Wait! Adriane stood there, arms crossed over her chest, glowering. Emily felt ashamed. I'm sorry, I just get so mad. I hate seeing animals hurt. Me too, Adriane said quietly. I shouldn't have accused your grandma, but have you asked her what's going on? I can't talk to her. Adriane raised her arms in frustration. She's always saying weird stuff about spirits and giving me herbal roots and yucky charms. Yucky charms? They're magically delicious, Emily exclaimed. The girls broke out laughing. Ag! The high-pitched scream made them jump. It came from the adjoining room. They ran in and found the cat standing on the table, straddling the ferret and looking at him as if he were a tasty treat. Help! The ferret screamed. The cat looked up. Seeing Emily, it backed off and crouched, still eyeing the ferret, a low growl rumbling from its chest. The ferret rolled out from under the cat's paws and fell on the floor with a thud. This beast thinks I'm a rodent. Ferrets are not rodents, more like weasels, Emily informed the ferret. That's comforting. She walked over to the cat. And how did you get out? She brushed her hand over the cat's back. The cat nudged Emily with its head, then rubbed against her. The growl turned into a purr that sounded like a lawnmower. Glad to see you're getting your normal appetite back, Emily told it with a smile. Don't tell me she talks too. Adriane exclaimed incredulously. Not exactly. I mean, this is so crazy. Animals don't talk. Well then, Adriane said, what about him? She jerked her thumb at the ferret, which was poking around the room, exploring curiously. And what about Stormbringer? Emily's mind was whirling, trying to sort it all out. I hear the wolf clearly, but in my head. But the ferret actually talks out loud. What about the cat? Adriane stroked the cat's head with gentle fingertips. She's like faint static. I can just barely make out a word here and there. Emily shook her head. But how can we hear them at all? I started hearing Storm when I found this. She rummaged in her pocket and pulled out a shiny stone. Shaped like a paw print, it was banded in gold, amber, and brown. Emily's eyes went wide. That is so weird. It's a tiger eye. I kind of like it, Adriane said defensively. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out her own gemstone. No, I mean, look at this. Adriane stared in amazement. Where did you find that? In this glade on the preserve, I saw some birds and some miniature deer there. You saw animals there? Adriane asked. Yeah, Emily said. She felt her pulse quicken at the memory of what had happened there. Where did you find yours? She asked. In the woods near a big field. I wonder if there are any more, Emily mused. Adriane shrugged. I don't know. The sound of a loud purr distracted them. They looked over to see the ferret scratching the big cat under its chin. The cat's eyes were closed in pleasure. I'm really an elf, you know, the ferret was telling the cat. The cat yawned and stretched. Emily, do you believe in magic? Adriane asked. Emily shook her head. If you would have asked me that yesterday, I would have thought you were nuts. Now, I don't know. The front door of the clinic banged open, and Emily heard Kevin's familiar, clomping stride coming down the hall toward them. Instinctively, both girls stuffed their stones into their pockets. Kevin was holding a FedEx envelope. Hey, Em, he said. Then he saw Adriane behind her. Oh, hey, he said to her. Hey yourself, she replied. Yeah, whatever, he said. He waved the envelope at Emily. This came for your mom. The return address was the University of Pennsylvania. Curiosity got the better of Emily. My mom's not here right now. I'll give it to her later, okay? Kevin frowned, but after a glance at Adriane, decided not to object. See you later, he said, backing out of the room. Yeah, Adriane looked down. Emily stood there, holding the package. The kids around here don't like me much, Adriane said after Kevin was gone. I'm used to it, though. They're just being jerks. So what is it? Adriane nodded at the envelope. Lab report on the skin samples from the cat, Emily explained. After a moment's hesitation, she opened the envelope and read the report. Its contents made her heart sink. Listen to this. Results of the testing are inconclusive. Traces of toxin. Recommend extreme caution. The area should be quarantined until further testing by agents from the Centers for Disease Control. Adriane gasped. Shut it down? They can't do that. Me and my gran live there. She grabbed Emily's arm. You have to hide that letter. But it was sent to my mom. I shouldn't have even opened it. Emily, if they shut down the estate, we'll have to move, Adriane pleaded. I've only been there 6 months, but it's my home now. I can't move again. Emily thought for a moment. Okay, I'll keep the letter hidden for now. But if this radiation or whatever it is not coming from the preserve, then where is it coming from? I don't know. Adriane sprang up. I've got to go tell Gran what's going on. If they close down the preserve, who'll protect the animals? The question echoed in Emily's mind. I'll come with you. She grabbed the ferret, who was busy examining himself in the mirror. I think we'd better take you with us before someone hears you talking. What's wrong with me talking? He asked, sounding insulted. Around here, Emily told him, ferrets don't talk.
I am not a ferret. I am an elf.
Yeah, and I'm Dr. Doolittle, Emily said.
I'm an elf, he insisted again. My name is Ozymandias. You can call me Ozzy.
He smiled a ferret smile. Adriane stared at him.
We need to make a pact, she turned to Emily, to keep all this secret, at least for now.
Okay. The two girls held out their hands. As they shook, a furry paw came down and sealed their pact. Chapter 6. Emily followed Adriane across the park and over a small hill that put them right on the main road to Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve. Ozzy rode comfortably in Emily's backpack. His head poked out of the top, snout covered with crumbs from a power bar he'd found inside.
Okay, Mr. Ozzy the talking ferret, spill it. Adriane smacked the side of the backpack. Psst. Ozzy spit out a mouthful of power bar. What?
Where did you come from? She asked. How did you get here? Emily added, swinging the pack around to rest against her chest.
How come you can talk? Adriane demanded. Stop! He cried. You're making me dizzy. 1 minute I was there, then I fell through the portal to here. I'm an elf. Well, I was an elf. Now look at me. I'm a furry beast with paws and fleas. He tried to scratch his back. Emily reached into the pack and scratched it for him. A little to the right. Ooh, good one.
They passed through the iron gates of the preserve and headed down the main road. What's a portal? Emily asked.
It's, a portal, Ozzy said. No, we don't know, said Adriane. A doorway between worlds, Ozzy explained. I fell through one and ended up here. And where did you come from, Alice? Wonderland? Adriane asked, rolling her dark eyes. Ozzy! And I came from my world! Adriane was starting to get impatient. Listen, ferret face. She leaned toward him. Gack! Ozzy dived back into the pack. Emily gave Adriane a stern look.
Does your world have a name? She asked Ozzy.
Aldenmore, Ozzy squeaked from inside the pack.
What are ferrymentals? Emily asked.
Ozzy popped his head back out. Don't you know anything? They're magic. They're really powerful stuff.
What do ferrymentals want? Emily asked.
They're looking for something.
The girls stopped and both looked at the ferret.
What? Mages, magic masters,
Ozzy whispered.
Magic masters? You are in the wrong place. Adriane laughed and smacked the backpack again. The road ended at the circular drive in front of the manor house.
Emily stared in awe at the old architectural monstrosity. Close up, it seemed spookier than ever, but at the same time it looked inviting, full of secrets waiting to be revealed. You actually live here? Emily walked over and peered in the sidelight windows that framed the enormous wooden front door. Ozzy clambered out of her backpack and leaped to the ground.
No, we live in a cottage around the back, Adriane explained.
Should we knock? Emily pressed on the door. It was open. She glanced at Adriane with a look of surprise, then pushed the door in all the way. The hinges squealed softly. The girls peered in. Ozzy craned his head around Emily's legs to get a look for himself. A wide hallway ran from the front door to an open foyer filled with couches, tables, and chairs. The girls were careful to leave the door open behind them. In silence, they edged forward into the foyer. Emily let out a loud breath. Wow, look at this place! Paintings hung on the walls, animals in beautiful garden settings, the mansion itself in all its early glory. Gardens filled with deer, peacocks, even lions and tigers. These are amazing. Emily stopped in front of a large painting of a man surrounded by 3 white tigers. Who's that? She asked. Adriane glanced up.
That's Mr. Gardner. Creak, thud.
The front door had closed. The girls whirled around as a figure stepped out from a column of dusty sunlight. "I see you've made some new friends, little bird." It was an old woman. She had dark, wrinkled skin and piercing dark eyes like Adriane's. A long white braid hung over her shoulder in glaring contrast to her forest green ankle-length dress. Her arms jingled with silver and turquoise bracelets.
Gran, we were just looking for you, Adriane exclaimed. This is Emily, and this is,
Ozzy stood beside Emily, arms crossed, tapping one paw on the floor. He didn't say a word. Gran bowed to him. "Welcome, woodland spirit," she said. Ozzy's eyes widened. Then Gran turned and looked Emily up and down with a piercing gaze. "Come here, child. I don't bite." Emily shuddered. Kevin had said this woman was a witch. She knew that had to be nonsense, but staring into the old woman's eyes now, she suddenly wasn't so sure. She glanced uncertainly at Adriane, who just rolled her eyes. Gran reached out and touched Emily's cheek with gentle fingers. "You are a special one, child." "Thank you, I think." Gran chuckled. "It is good to see little bird with friends. My name is Nakoda, but you can call me Gran." "These pictures," Emily asked, "do all these animals live here on the estate?" "At one time or another," Gran replied. "I have been with Mr. Gardner for more than 45 years now." "Where is Mr. Gardner?" Emily asked. "I'm sure he's on important business." "Something to do with animals?" Emily pressed. "Most probably. He's a zoologist. Quite the animal expert." "My mom's a vet. We love animals." "I can tell. Come, it's so dusty here. Why don't we go to our house?" The girls followed Gran out the front door. Emily leaned in to whisper to Adriane. "How come she calls you a little bird?" "It's my Indian name. She gave it to me. She's bird woman, so I'm stuck with it until I find my own." Adriane paused, looking uncomfortable. "Hey, you don't have to stay if you don't want. It's okay." "Are you kidding? This place is so cool." The caretaker's cottage was off to the left of the main house, through a grove of pines. The cottage was more like a lodge, with dark wooden beams making geometric patterns against a white plaster background. The girls and Ozzy followed Gran down a narrow hallway into a cozy, old-fashioned kitchen in the back of the house. It was bright and cheery. Crystals hung in the windows, catching the sunlight and casting rainbows on the walls. Gran poured some lemonade for the girls. "Please, sit, eat," she said, gesturing to the wooden dining table off to the side of the room. The girls sat down and Ozzy sniffed around the table. Suddenly famished, Emily took a cookie from the serving plate on the table. It was moist and delicious. Ozzy grabbed a cookie off the table and ran off with it. Adriane sat without eating. "Gran, we have to talk," she said. "About the animals." "I know," she replied. "What's happening to them?" Emily asked, trying not to sound accusing. Gran looked sad. "I don't know, Emily. This place has always been a safe haven for animals, but something has changed." "Gran," Adriane said, "people are going to come and shut the place down, maybe worse." "I know, little bird. The mayor's office called earlier, requesting my presence at a town meeting tomorrow night. Animals are being hurt and people are frightened." "They can't shut down Ravenswood," Adriane protested. "We live here. It's our home." "Yes, this is our home, and Mr. Gardner's, and home to many animals," her grandmother agreed. Adriane stood up, eyes sparking. "We have to fight this!" "Ah, little bird, you are so full of fire. Sometimes patience is the road to follow." "But we have to do something!" Adriane pleaded. Have faith, little bird, Gran said calmly. Emily and Adriane exchanged glances. Then Adriane seemed to come to some internal decision. She sat back down. Look, Gran, she said, pulling her stone out of her pocket. She held it out to show her grandmother. I found one too, Emily said, holding out her stone. Gran's eyebrow rose as she studied the stones. Where did you get these? We found them in the woods, Adriane told her. Keep these very safe, Gran said. Crystals are often charged with energy. They may hold strong magic. Magic? Emily said. Ozzy popped his head up by the side of the table.
Magic!
But the stones don't actually do anything. Emily turned to Adriane. At least, mine doesn't. Sometimes that which seems to do nothing can have great effect, Gran explained. A tiny pebble thrown into a quiet pond makes one ripple, then another, then a whole wave of ripples that spread in ever-growing circles. English, please, Gran, Adriane said. There is much to learn about magic, little bird. Perhaps the obvious is not always the answer. A furry paw stretched across the table, followed by a long furry body.
Delightful,
Ozzy mumbled, stuffing another cookie in his mouth. The girls stared at the ferret. They stared down at their sparkling gems. They looked back at Ozzy.
What?
Ozzy demanded around a mouthful of cookie.
What I do?
Gran didn't seem to notice. I have work to do, she said, getting up. You two, 3, stay and eat. She walked out the kitchen door. I really like this house, Emily said after Gran had left the room. Adriane jumped up. Want to see my room? Sure. Emily got up and followed Adriane, leaving the ferret to his feast. Don't eat too much, she called back to him. You'll get a tummy ache. Ozzy replied. Adriane's room was an explosion of color. Bright yellow paint peeked out in the spaces between the patchwork of posters on the walls. The ceiling was dark blue, with constellations of glow-in-the-dark stars. Emily studied the posters. Rock groups, mountain climbers high above the clouds, mountain bikers careening down dirt trails, snowboarders shooting sprays of white snow. She hardly knew Adriane, but she never would have pegged her for the type to have a room like this. She turned around full circle, taking it all in. It's fantastic. She noticed a red electric guitar leaning against the wall. Is that yours? She asked. Yep. Adriane bounced over to the guitar and picked it up. Sweet, huh? I guess. Adriane ran her hands over the polished red body. A real Fender Strat. She strummed across the strings. I've got this cool practice amp too, she said, indicating a small box on the floor. Plug her in. I can make great noise. What about music? Yeah, it's sometimes that too. The girls laughed as Adriane demonstrated.
What is that horrible noise?
Ozzy stood in the doorway, paws over his ears. It's rock and roll, Ozzy, Adriane said. Real magic. Ozzy's eyes widened.
Ah, so this is magic in your world. It's so noisy.
Adriane turned down the volume on the amp. Ozzy, Emily said, we don't have magic here. Ozzy jumped on the bed and flopped over a large pillow.
I knew I fell in the wrong portal. Oh, I just want to go home.
So tell us, what's the magic like where you come from? Adriane said. Ozzy stretched over the pillow.
Well, there's not much left. That's why the fairy mental sent me here, to get help.
Why do they need help? Emily asked.
Our world is in danger,
he said.
There's something called the Black Fire. It's poisoning everything.
Including animals? Adriane looked to Emily.
I suppose so. I was told it's the result of horrible dark magic. Whoever's behind it is using it against the fairy mentals.
Tell us more about the fairy mentals, Emily prompted.
They're forces of nature, and they protect good magic. The fairy mentals sent me to find 3 special human mages who can help us. but there's no magic here. I haven't found any mages, only you. He flopped over on his back. And I'm a ferret!
For some reason, Emily flashed on the bizarre twirling bits of leaves and dirt she had seen in the glade. "What do fairymentals look like?" she asked. But Ozzy had fallen asleep. Emily sat back, leaning against the wall. Then she noticed several objects hanging over Adriane's bed. They were rounded wooden hoops with a variety of colorful strings and cords threaded across them, like a spiderweb. Gemstones were woven amid the strands, and feathers hung from the bottom. "What are those?" she asked Adriane. "Dream catchers," Adriane told her. "Gran hung them. She says they're a web of protection. They're supposed to catch bad dreams and let the good ones in through the center hole. The energy of the gemstones strengthens the good dreams." "Like a barrier between two worlds," Emily said in a hushed voice. "Emily," Adriane said hesitantly, "what if Ozzy really does come from another world?" "So now we're supposed to believe in magical worlds too?" Emily shook her head. Adriane stared at her. "After what's happened here, after what you've seen, can you sit there and tell me it's not possible?" "I don't know," Emily had to admit. "There's so much weird stuff going on, I don't know what's possible." Adriane was silent. She gazed at the dream catchers. A slight smile played on her lips. "You know what might be cool?" Her jet-black eyes flashed. "What if we take the stones we've found and weave them into—" "Dream catchers?" Emily guessed, intrigued. "Better. Power bracelets," Adriane responded. Emily was into it. Sort of like making our own web of protection. They'd said it together. A few minutes later, the girls sat cross-legged on the floor amid a pile of rawhide strips, satin, and lanyard. Adriane had the idea to combine the colored lanyard and black satin string, and Emily shared some knots she knew. It took some trial and error to find a way to hold their gems securely, but at last they each had a very cool new bracelet. Adriane held her arm out and turned her wrist this way and that. "Not bad," she said admiringly. "So you've been here 6 months, right?" Emily said. "That means you've been to school." "Middle school," Adriane snorted. "The way some kids act, you think it was Stonehill Academy." "There must be some kids you like." But Emily remembered the girls in the park. Adriane shrugged. "Friends are overrated." Emily blinked. "You can't mean that." Adriane's silence told her she meant exactly that. A pang of homesickness swept over Emily. She'd always had friends she totally connected with. She turned around to face Adriane. "What do you think is going to happen at the meeting tomorrow night?" "They'll probably kick me and Gran out of here." Adriane began to pace back and forth. "Then they're going to send in the army to kill all the animals. Then they'll cut down all the trees and make a golf course or something." Emily laughed, not knowing if Adriane was joking or not. "That's a bit extreme, don't you think?" "You saw the letter. Quarantined. How extreme is that?" "What can we do?" Emily asked, suddenly feeling a wave of helplessness. "If we can prove there really are rare animals here, they'd have to leave Ravenswood alone. That glade where you found your stone, do you think you could find it again?" Adriane asked. "It's right behind the rocking stone." Adriane stopped. "There's nothing back there but woods." "No, that's where I saw it. I was going back there when I ran into you and Ozzy." "We need to find that glade. Can you get away tomorrow?" Adriane asked. "Sure, but we're going to have to be really careful." "I'm not afraid," Adriane boasted. "Are you?" "I grew up hiking in the Colorado mountains, where plenty of wild animals roam. I'm not afraid." Emily tried to sound as brave as she could. "You know," Adriane said carefully, "there's an Iroquois story that says if two people wear the same bracelet, it means they're linked, joined." "Like friends?" Emily smiled and raised her bracelet. Adriane grimaced. Then a small smile escaped her lips. She held her braceleted arm next to Emily's. The two gems sparkled in the fading sun. Chapter 7. The next morning, Emily was up early. She dressed quickly, then ran downstairs to check on the cat. Her remaining bandages looked clean and dry, no more seepage through the white gauze, no unnatural glow evident at all, and she actually showed interest in the canned food she gave it. She went to the pet palace and quickly fed the dogs, then returned to the house where she fetched Ozzy from her room. He was still sleeping on the big fluffy pillow she'd given him for a bed. As she slipped him into her backpack, he opened his eyes.
Hey! What are you doing?
Rise and shine. We're off to see the wizard.
Really? That's great news!
Emily shook her head as she bounced down the stairs. You are one wacky ferret. Emily made her way across the park and up the road to the preserve. The morning air held a faint crispness that reminded her summer was fading. She sighed, thinking of what September would bring. More changes. Ozzy stuck his head out of her backpack.
Can this wizard help us find the portal?
I was kidding about the wizard.
Oh.
Ozzy leaned out of the pack, clearly depressed.
I'll never get home, will I?
Maybe we can help you. He perked up.
You'd help me?
Of course I would. And Adriane would too.
You know, if I have to be stuck here, I'm glad it's with you.
Emily smiled. They found Adriane outside the cottage, brushing the Mistwolf's coat to a shiny luster. Stormbringer's eyes were closed in pleasure, but she opened them when Emily and Ozzy arrived. Morning, Adriane said with a smile as she glided the brush over the wolf's back. She had on hiking boots, a dark blue t-shirt, black jeans, and a baseball cap with the words "No Fear" embroidered on it. Hey, Emily returned. She looked at the wolf. Hi, Stormbringer. Hello, healer. Hello, traveler, the wolf replied, nodding to Ozzy. Why do you call me healer? Emily asked. That is what you do, the wolf replied.
Just don't call me breakfast.
Ozzy scrambled down Emily's side to the ground. I have already eaten, the wolf assured him. She looked as if she were grinning. Adriane knelt and unrolled a large scroll. Check this out. It's a map of the preserve. I took it off the wall in the foyer. The girls spread the map on the ground and crouched over it. Ozzy joined them. It's old, but the basic layout of the preserve is still the same, Adriane said. So I say we start here, up at the north quadrant, and follow this trail. It winds down here to the rocking stone. I don't see the glade near the stone, Emily observed. It's not on the map.
I fell out in a big open area,
Ozzy offered, walking out onto the map to study it. Emily looked at him. Do you have any idea how we can find it?
I don't know, but it's magic. Magic attracts magic, I know that much,
he replied. We don't have any magic, Emily said. Gren said these stones hold magic, Adriane reminded her, holding up her wrist. Sunlight reflected off the gold and amber jewel. Adriane rolled up the map, stood, and slung her small olive-green backpack over her shoulder. Let's go. Emily followed Adriane across the wide lawn in the back of the manor. A garden of hedges and flowers lay just beyond the green. The hedges were planted in geometric patterns with paths in between like a maze. At the entrance stood a large stone fountain in the shape of a mermaid. She held a beautiful carved urn over her head, and water poured from it to splash off her up-curved tail into the round basin below. This place is just so amazing, Emily breathed. Come on, slowpokes. Adriane had ducked through an opening in the trees at the edge of the lawn. Emily quickened her steps to catch up. They found themselves on a trail winding through a section of open woodlands. Narrow swaths of meadows separated clusters of trees and bushes. Stormbringer trotted on ahead, fading from view among the tall feathery grasses and wildflowers. Suddenly, Adriane stopped and looked around. Hold up, she said. Emily heard a rustling of leaves and the patter of approaching hoofbeats. Over there, she pointed through the trees. The most amazing creatures came bounding through the woods. They looked like deer, but with long ears and green stripes like zebras. Look, what are those? Adriane whispered. Some kind of zebra, Emily guessed.
Jiren!
Ozzy simply stated. The girls looked at him. What? Emily asked incredulously.
Jiren! Herd beasts found in the hills of the Moorgroves. I've seen lots of them. They're fast and they jump really high.
Don't tell me they come from your world, too, Adriane asked.
Okay, I won't tell you,
Ozzy replied. Wherever they came from, they're here now, Adriane said. Come on, this is wild. The girls ran through the woods and came to a wide open field, but the strange animals were too swift, and the field was empty. Adriane kicked the dirt. Look, there's the rocking stone. Emily pointed to where the jagged peak rose above the trees in the distance. Adriane pulled the map from her backpack and studied it. We can pick up the trail on the other side. They started across the open field. The tall grass brushed against their legs. The air smelled sweet as soft particles blew around them. Hey! Look, you're sparkling, Adriane said. Emily looked at her arms and saw that they were, indeed, sparkling. Her legs looked like they were covered in tiny glittering lights. Then she saw them. It's the rainbow flowers, she exclaimed. All through the grassy expanse, they were sending tiny bursts of color into the air. That is so cool, Adriane exclaimed. Your hair's all sparkly, Emily laughed. Rainbow twinkles were catching on Adriane's long dark hair. Ozzy hopped down and started nosing around in the flowers.
Magic seeds! This is good. Very good.
What are you talking about? Adriane asked him. Ozzy nosed a flower again.
Can't you feel it? It's very magic.
These flowers were all over that glade where I found my stone, Emily said. Right before... Her voice trailed off. Where is Storm? Off somewhere. She has a mind of her own. There was a rustling in the grass. The three turned together. Adriane was standing there watching them, not 15 yards away. Soft green striped fur rustled as it breathed. Big purple eyes blinked at the girls. Wow, I have never seen anything like that, Emily whispered. It's so amazing. What do we do? Like, hello, we come in peace? Asked Adriane. Might work, Emily replied. Emily started walking slowly towards the animal. The Jiren tensed but stood still as Emily approached. It stood as high as Emily's nose. She came closer, hand reaching out. Ever so slowly, her fingers made contact with the animal's forehead, and it blinked its eyes, pulling its head back to sniff her fingers. Emily smiled and ran her hand over the animal's mane. The fur felt so soft and silky. Emily broke out in a grin. She turned to face the others. It likes me. Bang! The sound of gunfire split the air. Ozzy screamed. The Jiren bolted. Guns! Emily exclaimed. Someone's shooting! Over that hill, Adriane pointed. Ozzy dived into Emily's backpack.
They don't hunt ferrets in this world, do they? He squeaked.
They shouldn't be hunting here at all, Adriane exclaimed angrily. She ran up the hill. Emily and Ozzy followed. On the other side of the hill, 3 hunters were creeping across the grass. One of the men had his rifle raised. The other 2 were holding a huge net between them. They were moving slowly toward the most bizarre creature Emily had ever seen.
What the?
Ozzy scampered to Emily's shoulder to get a better look. Is that the monster? Adriane asked.
That's no monster,
Ozzy exclaimed.
I'd recognize that furball anywhere.
As they watched, the hunters crept slowly toward the creature. But unlike other animals, this one didn't seem to have a sense of danger. It didn't move, it just sat. Ozzy was getting more agitated.
That's felonious!
He dug his claws into Emily's scalp.
Ouch! Calm down, Ozzy.
Emily pulled him off her head.
We've got to help him!
Ozzy wriggled out of her arms and leapt to the ground. The men were shaking their heads and gesturing toward each other. Then the man with the rifle pointed it at the sky. Bang! The creature still didn't move. The man lowered his gun and moved forward slowly.
We can't let them capture Fowl,
Ozzy insisted. Emily looked to Adriane. I don't know. It's a talking ferret. Maybe they're all crazy, Adriane offered.
It's a creature of magic,
Ozzy yelled. And it's not dangerous, Adriane said.
No!
Ozzy was very frazzled.
You've got to do something,
he urged the girls. Emily nodded her head at Adriane. All right. Adriane straightened her shoulders. Okay, I'll distract those hunters while you and Ozzy see if you can move that thing out of here. Be careful, Emily said, crouching low in the tall grass. You too. Adriane took a deep breath and confidently walked out into the hill. Hey! Startled, all three hunters whirled to face her. It's a kid, one of them said. Go home, it's not safe around here. Undaunted, Adriane continued until she was right next to them. This is a wildlife preserve, she said. Didn't you see the signs? They say no hunting. Who are you? The rifle holder asked. I'm Adriane Charday. I live at Ravenswood Manor. We don't have to listen to a kid, one of the net-holding men said. Their backs were to the creature, and to Emily. She seized the moment. Let's go, she said to Ozzy. She dashed into the field and skidded to a stop right in front of the purple giant. Ozzy was running so fast he hit the creature's belly and bounced back off. The thing was enormous, easily 8 feet tall. It sat motionless in the grass, surrounded by a ring of rainbow puff flowers. Deep purple fur shimmered in the sunlight. Emily stared in wonder. It sort of looked like a cross between a great bear and Humpty Dumpty. Its giant eyes were shut. A thin line for a mouth ran across its face, and it had no neck. Ozzy scrambled up the huge beast and looked into its face.
Felonious! It's me, Ozymandias!
The creature just sat, eyes closed, still as a statue. Maybe he's been tranquilized, Emily whispered.
No, the ferret said quickly. He can't be tranquilized, that's absurd.
Emily studied the creature. She felt oddly drawn to him. She ran her hand over his smooth fur and felt a wave of calm wash over her. Light caught her eye, and she looked down to see her gem pulsing a soft aqua blue. She took a deep breath. What are you? She asked.
He's a fairy creature.
Ozzy had resorted to kicking the huge beast.
Wake up, you big thing!
Looking past the creature, Emily saw that the field fell away into a shallow gully. Maybe we can roll him down into that gully. She placed her hands on the creature and pushed. Come on, Ozzy, help me! The creature put up no resistance as he started to tilt over. Despite his girth, he felt as light as air.
What?
Ozzy cried.
That's ridiculous! You can't roll... Ah!
In a cloud of rainbow dust, the giant furball started rolling down the hill, the shrieking ferret hanging on. What was that? Asked one of the hunters. If you've harmed that rare panda, you're in big trouble, Adriane yelled. Get out of our way! The huge creature rolled to a stop in the gully, sitting upright. Keeping her head down, Emily quickly crawled back to peer across the field. She saw the man with the rifle start to shove past Adriane. Suddenly he stopped. Hey, where did it go? Watching Adriane point to the trees in the direction opposite the gully, Emily noticed an opalescent glow at the dark-haired girl's wrist. The section of woods that Adriane was pointing to rustled and shook, as if disturbed by something passing through. Look over there! Another hunter cried. It's in those trees! The hunter with the rifle moved off in the direction of the sounds. Come on! For a moment, Adriane looked stunned. Then she seemed to collect herself and yelled after them. And stay off this property! Chapter 8. The enormous creature sat like a giant Buddha, unaffected by anything that had happened. Adriane came sliding into the gully. That was so weird, she exclaimed breathlessly. How did you do that? Emily asked, wide-eyed. I don't know, Adriane said slowly. I was so focused on doing something to distract the hunters. Then I saw the trees and reached for them. It was intense. I felt like I was pushing through water. I saw your stone glow, Emily said. Adriane looked down at her bracelet. The stone looked perfectly normal. Yeah, I pushed harder in my head, and my stone flashed, and then the trees across the field started to shake and move. Emily peered at her own gemstone. Do you think these are really power stones?
Me.
Adriane looked around. Where's the ferret? Ozzy? Emily stood up quickly. Where are you?
Murph.
Emily circled the purple creature. Ozzy? Emily put her hands on the giant. His fur felt warm and soft. Help me move it! Adriane got up and pushed alongside Emily. 2 gigantic eyes opened and blinked. They were deep reservoirs of calm and gentleness. He blinked again. Please, could you move just a little? Emily tried. Our friend seems to be caught under you. The purple giant seemed to search Emily's face. She felt overwhelmed by a sadness so deep that tears welled in her eyes. But the feeling passed in a flash and her hands fell away from the creature's side as he lumbered to his feet.
Gah!
Ozzy sputtered. Emily reached down to peel Ozzy off the ground. Are you all right?
No, I'm all flattened out.
The ferret shook dust off himself and kicked the big creature.
What are you trying to do, squish me?
The huge beast just blinked down at Ozzy. Then silently, he turned and started to walk away.
Hey, come back here,
Ozzy yelled. He ran and grabbed hold of the creature's leg, then scampered all the way up to his shoulder. We'd better follow him until we're sure those hunters are really gone, Emily said. The girls ran to catch up as the purple giant entered the woods. He moved silently forward, as if gliding on air, trailing a colorful wake of rainbow flowers behind him. So that's where the flowers are coming from, Emily exclaimed.
Felonious, am I glad to see you. I thought I was sent to the wrong place.
Ozzy gestured wildly with his arms as he chattered into the great beast's ear.
I ended up in this strange body. What were those fairy mentals thinking? Look, I'm a weasel, he wailed.
A flash of color moved through the trees behind them. Emily grabbed Adriane's arm. Did you see that? See what? Adriane stopped to look. In the stillness, they heard rustling and the patter of hoofbeats. Suddenly, a herd of Jiren burst through the brush, bounding through the trees. Adriane whirled around. Look, there's more! Behind the Jiren, a group of strange duck-like birds appeared. They were goofy-looking, with silver bills and webbed feet too big for their bodies. One of them waddled right up to Emily. It cocked its head up at her, but made no threatening moves. Hello, Emily said. Hello yourself, it responded. It spoke out loud, its rubbery beak moving weirdly to shape the words. Are you a mage? Mage? No, I'm a girl. The creature thought for a moment. All right, then. It waddled past them, herding the others along the trail of rainbow flowers left behind by the purple giant Ozzy called Felonious. Following the parade of animals, the girls made their way around the mass of dense thickets. Felonious was entering the natural archway that led to the rocking stone. This is it, Adriane exclaimed. The glade must be on the other side. Emily hung back, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of being back here again. Wow, Adriane stopped awestruck. This is amazing. The glade was just as awesome as Emily remembered. The slender boughs of the weeping willows touched the pond, sending cascading ripples through the water's reflection of the sky. The ground was a flower carpet of rainbow colors. Sparkling sunlight glinted off the turquoise wing of a bird perched on the arching bridge. Wow, Adriane breathed, looking around. I can't believe this was here and I never knew it. Felonious was settling his great bulk beside an enormous misshapen tree. Stormbringer padded out from the far trees and walked over to him, lowering her head, her ears, and her tail in a wolfish bow. Around the fringes of the glade, Emily caught brief glimpses of animals huddled together. The ferret raced over to the girls. Ozzy, what is it doing here? Emily asked, looking at the purple creature. I don't know yet. He's not talking. An animal that doesn't talk. What a concept, Adriane remarked.
Fel is not an animal, Ozzy said. Come and say hello.
Emily and Adriane followed Ozzy over to Fel. Ozzy stopped in front of the giant, strange-looking creature. The glade was still.
This is Emily and Adriane, he said. They're girls, but they seem to have a talent for magic.
He sat back, pleased with himself. Hello, Emily said shyly. Hi, Adriane said. Felonious blinked, and Emily felt a wave of warmth and love pour over her. Then, as if by some silent signal, dozens of animals began to emerge from the forest. Emily rubbed her eyes. I think I'm seeing things, she whispered. Before them stood a pony with resplendent wings of bright orange and yellow, like those of a butterfly. A dozen Jirans stepped forward, followed by a host of other creatures she could not even begin to identify. Then Emily caught her breath. A magnificent white owl with glowing turquoise eyes hobbled to a halt at her feet. Her heart, so full of wonder a moment ago, emptied with a dull ache. The owl's wings glowed a sickly green, just like the burns on the cat. These broken wings can't fly. Emily heard the words in her head as clearly as if they'd been spoken aloud. Emily! Adriane was pointing to the animals. Emily was taken aback by the tears that ran down Adriane's cheeks. She looked more closely at the other animals. Oh no! She gasped.
Oh my!
Even Ozzy seemed shocked. The hind legs and the back of one of the Jiran was a patchwork of raw abrasions, all colored with the faint green glow. It swayed slightly, as if just standing up was an effort. The winged pony's flank was slashed by a lightning strike-shaped burn. Some of the animals couldn't walk very well, and others were helping the wounded move along. The duck-like creature she'd met earlier was herding forward several others of its kind. They were all covered in the noxious glow. Emily felt the misery of their pain, but she also sensed a spark of hope that flared in them upon seeing Fel. She gripped Adriane's hand. A Jiran, its leg crisscrossed with greenish burns, approached Felonious. Emily held her breath as the purple giant reached out toward the Jiran. Immense but gentle paws touched the animal's sides and legs. The Jiran shivered. Fel's fur began to shimmer. The brighter he shone, the fainter the green glow became. Then Fel's light faded, and the horrible burns were gone. How did you do that? Emily asked, astonished. He removed his paws and released a cloud of rainbow sparkles that twinkled through the air. The Jiran bent a front leg in a bow to Fel, then danced away, its hooves kicking up dirt and grass. Adriane turned to Emily, her face full of wonderment as one by one the injured animals approached Fel. As he worked, more and more rainbow sparkles floated and danced over the glade. The air glittered. Rainbow puff flowers sprouted and blossomed. Emily was filled with a sense of wonder, of hope and dreams, and magic. Emily looked down at the owl sitting near her. As gently as possible, she lifted the owl into her arms. Then, she turned to Fel. I want to help, she said. Chapter 9. Emily held the owl as Fel's great paws stroked its wings. The jewel on her wrist pulsed with a bright blue light. She was concentrating so hard, she was barely aware of Adriane, Ozzy, Stormbringer, and the other animals watching. As the light from her stone mixed with Fel's warm glow, she could feel the poison leaving the owl's body. She could sense its strength returning. Her heart leaped into flight. The owl opened its bright eyes and looked adoringly at Emily. She gently scratched its head and was thrilled to see a glimmer of turquoise and gold run through its feathers. There, is that better? She asked. A mouse would be good. That was amazing, Emily, Adriane breathed. Emily laughed as she brushed the soft feathers with her hand. Then she lowered the owl to the ground. Ariel likes you. The duck thing was standing there watching. Thank you, I think. Her name is Ariel? Yes. What's your name? Emily asked.
Ronif, it told her. I'm a quiffle.
Emily blinked. My name is Emily. These are my friends, Adriane, Ozzy, and Stormbringer. She pointed to each in turn. The quiffle looked them over.
All right, then.
It waddled away. Come on, let's help them. Emily got up to carry one of the wounded quiffles to Fell. Adriane joined her. The sun dropped behind the trees, its golden rays cutting across the glade. But Emily hardly noticed, too busy holding and soothing the sick and wounded animals while Fell healed them. Adriane moved among the larger animals, helping them get to Fell. At last, no more animals came forward. Emily sat down exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. Emily held the beautiful owl in her lap and gazed at the extraordinary collection of creatures gathered in the glade. They were all watching her. She sensed their joy at being healed, and yet they seemed nervous, darting glances into the woods and up toward the sky. Adriane approached, half a dozen baby quiffles riding in her pockets. Adriane plopped 3 into Emily's lap, then sat down carefully so as not to disturb her passengers. Ariel let the tiny quiffles snuggle into her feathers. They cooed happily, and Emily laughed.
Fantastic,
Ozzy said as he walked over. We didn't really do anything, Emily said. Val healed them all.
Don't be so modest.
Did you see your stone glowing? Adriane asked. Like mine did, when I made those trees move. Emily checked her jewel. It wasn't glowing now. Maybe the stones react to magic, she suggested.
Very possible, Ozzy said. Fell's flowers are seeding your world with magic. Those stones could be absorbing it.
Or they store magic like batteries, and let us use it, Adriane ventured. Could anyone use these, or just us? Emily wondered. Adriane looked at Ozzy, eyes narrowed. What else do you know that you haven't told us?
Those burns,
Ozzy said, looking over at the animals.
It's the black fire. I had no idea it was this bad.
No wonder they're all scared, Emily said. Talk to them, Ozzy.
Who, me?
Tell them everything's going to be all right, Emily added. Come on, Adriane said.
Oh, all right.
Ozzy got up and walked over to the animals.
Hello, I'm Ozymandias. Ozzy.
The animals all perked up, eyes wide open, ears pricked forward. The ferret steeled himself and faced the crowd.
I'm an elf. You don't look like an elf,
Ronif the quiffle remarked.
That's right, genius. I know I don't look like an elf. Gah.
Go on, Ozzy. You're doing great, Emily said encouragingly.
I'm from Aldenmore like you. I grew up in the village of Farthingdale near the moor groves.
Sounds of recognition were heard from the animals.
It's a secluded elven place. Too secluded for me. I wanted to explore the world. If I had known any better, I would have stayed home.
He surveyed the expectant faces and continued.
One day, I wandered out among the moor groves and got lost in the dark forests. Fell found me and brought me to the fairy glen, and I actually met the fairy mentals.
Murmurs of wonderment surged through the animals. Encouraged, Ozzy grew more animated, waving his paws and shuffling back and forth.
They knew I was coming. Don't ask me how. Who knows the ways of the fairies? They told me Aldenmore was in great danger, that soon there would be no place safe.
An animal bugled agreement. Emily thought it was one of the Jiren.
The fairy mentals are searching for an enchanted place, the source of all fairy magic. They said they needed humans to help. I was to find 3 mages. A healer?
He paused and looked directly at Emily.
A warrior?
He looked at Adriane.
And a blazing star.
Eyes wide, Emily glanced at Adriane. Blazing star? She whispered, perplexed. Adriane shrugged. Ozzy continued.
I didn't have the faintest idea what they meant, but it's not every day a fairy mental asks for your help. So I followed their directions and somehow ended up getting tossed through some portal and into this world, stuck in the body of a ferret. This is so embarrassing.
Ronif stepped forward.
The fairy mentals were right. The black fire is destroying our world, poisoning us. If we hadn't found our way here, and if the great fairy creature hadn't helped us, we would have died.
What is the black fire? Emily asked, eyes wide. Ronif turned toward her.
It rains from the sky, burning all it touches.
Emily turned to Adriane. My mom was right, she said. It's some kind of toxin or radiation, maybe. Now we are refugees here in this strange land, a winged horse said.
Some of us have left families behind.
The speaker was one of the Quiffles. The others voiced their agreement. The baby Quiffles buried their heads in Emily's arms and started to cry. Another winged horse stepped forward.
We Pegasi know of legends.
It looked around at the two girls.
Old legends say that once, long ago, animals and humans worked together to make magic.
Emily looked down at her stone. Mage? Healer? Magic? The words ran round and round in her head. Ozzy spoke up again.
If the legends say that animals and humans once worked together, then that's what we are going to do again.
The animals signaled their approval with bleats and neighs, barks and hisses, quacks and hoots.
Go, Ozzy!
Adriane cheered. The sniffling Quiffles stared up at Ozzy.
Hey, I may be a ferret, but I can still dance.
Ozzy shuffled an elf dance in front of the Quiffles.
Look, the wig jig!
He leaped into the air, twisted and landed with his arms outstretched, and fell over backwards. The Quiffles giggled.
What I wouldn't give for feet,
Ozzy mumbled into the dirt.
Suddenly, the ground beside him swirled and he jumped back. The animals looked at one another. Emily and Adriane stared as 4 small pools of dirt rose from the ground, spinning into tiny whirlpools.
Fairy mantles!
Someone in the crowd said reverently. Everyone fell silent as the whirlpools danced toward the girls. Emily and Adriane stood quickly as the whirlpools buzzed around their legs. Thank you. The voice seemed to come from the closest whirlpool, and Emily turned to follow it. Friends? Came the voice of another. Sir. Another said in a swirling frenzy. It flew apart, twigs and dirt flying. The first whirlpool spun by even faster. Search. Search? Search for what? Emily asked, listening hard. Home. 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 The third cyclone added its tiny voice in a harmonic chorus as the 3 spun together, weaving in and out and around the girls. Please? Can't you tell us more? Emily had bent over to make sure they could hear her. One tiny tornado spun wildly by her. We cannot stay here.
I don't mean to be rude, but before you go, you'd think you could, change me back?
Ozzy whispered. You cannot go back. The whirlpools were wavering, starting to fall apart, as if the strength it took to communicate was too much for them. Please don't go. Where is home? Emily was close to tears. The whirlpools spun faster, trying to hold together for one last message, but with a whisper, they blew apart and became the wind.
No!
Emily cried. Emily, Adriane said in a hushed tone. There, on the ground before them, a word was etched in the dirt. Avalon.
Thanks a lot!
Ozzy was jumping up and down. Avalon. Emily stared at the word as a cool breeze blew it to dust. What did it mean? The animals moved about restlessly. Somehow they understood what the fairy mentals were saying. There was no going back. They were refugees without a home. An unspoken sadness spread through the glade.
What about the monster?
A little Quiffle asked in a tiny voice. A perceptible chill swept through the crowd. Why does this dark creature hunt us down? Asked Adriane. It's out there somewhere, waiting, a Pegasus said ominously. Fell stepped forward and the crowd parted to let him through. A sense of calm spread through the animals. Emily rose and went to Fell. She put her arms around him as far as she could reach and clutched his fur close to her. He made a soft noise. Adriane joined Emily. The little quiffles giggled and the girls laughed. Slowly, others crept up to snuggle in. Emily and Adriane were soon buried in warm animals. For that moment, surrounded by the giant arms and warm magic of Fel, no one was afraid. Stars winked in a velvet sky as Adriane walked Emily down the road out of the preserve. "Well, we found the animals," Adriane said at last. "We sure did," Emily agreed. "So what's your analysis of the situation, Doc?" Adriane asked lightly, but she looked tense. "The fairy mentals want us to find something." "A place?" Emily began. "Avalon, the home of fairy magic." "Adriane, Ozzy said the fairy mentals need 3 mages." Adriane looked at her, waiting. "If we're 2 of them, who's the 3rd? "I don't know anything about mages," Adriane said with a shrug. "But I do know we can't let Ravenswood be destroyed. Those animals have nowhere else to go." "You're right. We have to do something." "We will." Adriane held up her bracelet and the striped jewels sparkled in the moonlight. Emily lifted up her own gem. "Together," she said. A spark flashed between the 2 stones, a connection that would last forever. Adriane turned and walked back up the road to the preserve. Emily looked out over the parklands at the warm lights of her house. Avalon. The word drifted through her mind like a soft breeze as she walked home. Chapter 10. The Stonehill Town Hall was a 2-story, red brick building right on Main Street, across from a nicely tended park with a playground and lots of benches and trees. Carolyn parked their green Explorer while Emily searched the crowded parking lot for Adriane and Gran. Then she heard the sputtering of an old pickup truck and looked over to see Gran barreling into a parking space. The ancient engine protested, shuddered, and came to rest. "Hey!" Adriane jumped out to greet Emily. "Hey!" Emily returned. She introduced her mother to Gran as they walked toward the front steps. The town hall was jammed. Mayor Davies was up on the podium listening to people argue back and forth about Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve. They were convinced some dangerous predator was killing innocent animals. Why couldn't these people see how important Ravenswood was? Emily thought. But she couldn't dare tell them about Fel, that he was magic. How could she explain that he'd healed the animals? Suddenly, her wrist began to itch like crazy. She checked her bracelet. Her stone was pulsing light. Quickly, she pulled down the sleeve of her sweatshirt to cover it. But she had the strangest sensation that someone was watching her. She looked around the room, and her eyes met the bright blue eyes of the blonde girl whose friends had teased her at Arrowhead Park. "Who's that?" Emily asked Adriane in a whisper. Adriane scowled. Cara Davies, the mayor's daughter. "You don't like her much," Emily remarked. "Who wears pink sweaters and perfectly matched pink sneakers? She's such a Barbie." Adriane crossed her arms over her chest and glared daggers at Cara, and suddenly the jewel on her bracelet sparkled. Startled, Adriane covered her wrist. Emily's eyes widened. What was that about? The crowd was buzzing. "Place should be closed. Wild animals, it's too dangerous." People were clearly upset. Mayor Davies called for order. Then he held up a fax, which he said was from the University of Pennsylvania. "Uh-oh, this is bad," Adriane said to Emily. Carolyn glanced at Emily. Emily tried to smile but felt her lips lock into a grimace. "This settles it," the mayor said. "Health officials from the Center for Disease Control will be here in 2 days. So if we can't find a solution to this problem, they will give us one, I'm sure." "You've got that right," yelled Mrs. Beasley Winder, a very vocal member of the town council. "The place should be shut down and the land properly developed," she repeated to a chorus of agreements. "The animals need a place to live also," Emily said more loudly than she'd intended. "Yeah, they have rights too," Adriane echoed. "Excuse me, since when do children have a voice in town matters?" Mrs. Winder said condescendingly, "especially those involving public safety." "Okay, folks, let's take a break and cool off," the mayor said. "Mrs. Charday, may I speak to you for a minute? You too, Dr. Fletcher." Carolyn and Gran rose. Adriane and Emily started to follow, but Carolyn stopped them. You two wait outside. You think you can do that without creating a town incident? Emily knew better than to argue with her mother when she used that tone. Mortified, the girls left the building and walked over to the park. Except for their moods, the summer night was perfect. Low humidity, a cool breeze, and a golden waxing moon. Adriane kicked at a small rock with her sneaker. Now what? My mom's gonna kill me about that letter, Emily wailed. I wish we'd done something else. Shh, wait, someone's coming, Adriane hissed. In the orangey glow of a street lamp, Emily saw pink sneakers. She and Adriane stared as Kara strolled up to them. What? Kara asked. Is there gum in my teeth? What do you want? Adriane asked rudely. Kara didn't seem fazed. It's a free country. I can walk here if I want to. She looked at Emily. Almost didn't recognize you without a pile of dogs. Emily reddened. I'm Emily Fletcher. I'm Kara Davies. We know who you are, Adriane interrupted shortly. So, I know who you are too, Kara replied, not missing a beat. Great, now what do you want? Adriane shot back. Nothing, I just thought you could tell me what store in the mall carries those bracelets. You can't buy them, Adriane told her with obvious satisfaction. I can buy anything I want. Kara dismissed Adriane with a flick of her hand. Well, you can't buy these. Adriane held up her arm and shook the bracelet in front of Kara's face. The stone blazed to life with a fierce golden fire. Startled, Adriane quickly pulled her wrist behind her back. Kara's bright blue eyes were as wide as saucers. Wow, how'd you make it glow like that? Batteries? She guessed. Adriane looked at Emily. Neither girl replied. Kara tried a new ploy. Maybe I can help you and your wild animals if you give me one of your bracelets, she offered. No way, said Adriane. Wait a minute, Emily said, thinking fast. Maybe Kara can help us. If we show her where we got these, maybe she could convince her father to help the animals. All the animals. She looked meaningfully at Adriane. Daddy always listens to me, Kara boasted. But first, you have to take me to the store where you got those. Read my lips, Adriane stated. No way! Adriane, maybe Kara could find her own stone? Emily suggested. Sure, I'm a power shopper, Kara smiled, showing perfect teeth. And you could just tell me where in the mall. You wouldn't even have to go with me. Oh, of course. It would just be horrible being seen with us, Adriane said. I just meant it might be easier, Kara replied, as if she were speaking to a 3-year-old. She twirled the ends of her long blonde hair. Emily nudged Adriane. Okay, Adriane agreed, but we have to take you there. And you have to promise that whatever we show you, you'll keep secret, Emily added. Of course. Kara dropped her voice to a whisper. I understand how important it is to keep cool about fashion. Pretty soon, everyone would have one. Jeez, that's not the point, Adriane burst out. Kara gave a well-practiced, like, what's with her look. So, you promise? Emily prompted. Kara was getting impatient. Yes, fine. Emily! Emily looked up to see her mother calling her from the steps of the town hall. Gran stood beside her. Others were leaving the building. Evidently, the meeting was over. Coming, Emily called back. She turned to Kara. Tomorrow at noon, meet us by the baseball diamond in the playing fields, and we'll take you into the woods. You found those in the woods? How disgusting! Forget it! Adriane shrugged. Okay, fine. We'll do it without you. Wait, let me see those again. Kara grabbed for Emily's wrist. Brilliant turquoise light flared from the blue-green gem. Kara jumped back. It was so fast, it might have been a trick of the light. This time it was Emily who was shocked by the vivid flare of her jewel. Kara stared with her mouth open. Okay, noon, she said. As they drove home, Carolyn filled Emily in on her conversation with Gran and the mayor. Too many people were worried about dangerous predators, and even the mayor had to admit an interest in the money a new development would bring the town. The university analysis presents more immediate problems, Carolyn went on. Luckily, the sheriff's office got a copy since mine seems to have gotten lost. She gave Emily a look. Emily sank into her seat. I shouldn't have hidden it. That was pretty dumb, huh? Yes, it was, especially since the mayor's office faxed me a copy only a few hours later. She glanced at Emily. Since you read it, you know they detected an unidentified toxin and they recommended quarantine. But they can't do that! Health officials from the CDC will be here in a few days. Unless we can show them the place is safe, it may have to be shut down. Emily softly rubbed the jewel under her sweatshirt sleeve. She and Adriane had to figure out how to help Felonius and the animals. Time was running out. Chapter 11. It was 1:45 when Emily left her house. With the Pet Palace population slowly dwindling as vacations ended, her chores were taking less time. She thought hard as she crossed the picnic grounds and headed over to the baseball fields. The townspeople were wrong. Fel was no monster. But they were also more right than they knew. Something evil was in those woods, and it was stalking all kinds of animals. How could they fight that? How is this supposed to work? Emily looked up to find Kara standing on home plate. The blonde girl wore a silver silk jacket over a pink t-shirt that said Rockstar and fake silver gems. Light green shorts and strappy sandals completed the outfit. Oh, hi, Emily said. In her concern for the animals, she had almost forgotten about Kara. What are we supposed to do? Kara demanded. Just wander around in the woods? It's creepy and dangerous. Do we have a treasure map or something? Her steely gaze bore into Emily. How about we just saddle up and follow the old Injun trail? Adriane had come up from the other direction. Do you always wear black? Kara remarked, taking in Adriane's black jeans, black t-shirt, and black hiking boots with clear disdain. Just until they invent a darker color, Adriane retorted. She tossed her long black braid over her shoulder. Let's go! Where are we going exactly? Kara asked. You're about to get the grand tour of the Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve, Adriane told her. We show you around and then take you home. That's it. She turned and walked back up toward the road. Emily followed. Hey! Kara ran to catch up. What about those stones? If you find one, we'll throw you a party, Adriane said. You know, you should really try a little bran in your diet. Shut up! Adriane quickly strode up the path. Kara only had one thing on her mind. So, what do I look for? Minerals, quartz crystals. I have a book on gems in my backpack. She slung off her designer pack and then began digging in it. You do? That's really cool. Emily was impressed. Adriane moved on ahead, not wanting any part of the conversation. Here, look. Kara pulled out a small, fat book. See? Identifying minerals and gems. It's grouped by structure, composition, and luster. The structure is the shape, composition is the purity of the stone, and luster is color. Wow. It struck Emily that Kara might not be as shallow as she seemed to be. She might even be pretty smart. Kara continued. Here's the really precious stones, emeralds, sapphires, and my favorite, diamonds. We can look up your stone in here too. Emily held up her wrist as Kara flipped through the pages, trying to find a match. We made our own bands, she commented self-consciously. It was Adriane's idea. Kara barely glanced up. Not bad. I have some silver chains that'll look much better. I'll get you one. I love silver, thanks, Emily said. Here, looks like aventurine. Kara pointed to the page. Properties include protection, comfort, and healing. Emily's hazel eyes widened. What a coincidence that she, of all people, picked up a healing stone. Sunlight reflected off the stone, sending shimmers of color through it. Kara was mesmerized. She softly touched the gemstone. Blinding shafts of blue and green light flared from the stone. Both girls screamed and Emily jerked her hand back. Adriane wheeled around and ran back. What happened? I don't know, my stone, it just... Emily began. That was so awesome, Kara exclaimed. I've never seen anything like that. What did you do? Adriane asked Kara accusingly.
Easy, Godzilla. I didn't do anything. Her stone just lit up like a sparkler.
Adriane glared. Kara beamed. Adriane turned to Emily. Are you okay? I'm fine, Emily answered. The gem in its woven bracelet was now back to normal. That was so weird.
I'm going to use silver chains for my jewel, Kara went on excitedly. Adriane ignored her. Let's just keep going.
She led them up the main road to the Ravenswood Manor. As they rounded the bend, the mansion loomed ahead like a gigantic haunted house nestled in the woods.
Are you related to the Addams family? Kara quipped. Very funny, Adriane replied. You've never seen Ravenswood Manor?
Just in some old pictures. They used to have tours of the grounds in the manor house, Emily said.
Big business on Halloween, I bet, Kara remarked. Adriane just rolled her eyes. Come on, we'll go out past the manor. I'll show you the gardens out back. What about my stone? We said you might find one, Adriane said. Kara crossed her arms and pouted.
We could look around a bit more, Emily suggested.
All right, let's go.
Adriane led them past the side of the manor and onto another path. They were soon in deep woods, and the air was cool and damp. Above, the boughs seemed woven together into a solid canopy of green. Something rustled in the trees. What was that? Kara whispered nervously. Just animals, Emily reassured her. They won't hurt you. This is creepy. It's like they're following us.
They probably never saw anything like you before, Adriane said sarcastically. On any other day, I might take that as a compliment.
Kara studied the ground around her. She gingerly picked up rocks and pebbles, compared them to pictures in her book, and placed them neatly in her backpack.
Remind me again why she's here, Adriane grumbled to Emily.
To convince her father to keep the preserve safe.
Ugh, bugs, Kara announced behind them. I bet there's poison ivy all over here. Just keep looking for stones, Adriane shot back over her shoulder. They could be anywhere.
She leaned in toward Emily again. And what about the CDC, she continued. How are we going to get through that inspection? I don't know, Emily admitted.
I don't think they have a listing for black fire.
Over the next hour, Kara amassed a small collection of stones, but none of them glowed no matter what she did. After a while, she sat down, picked out the nicest stone, and held it tightly in one hand. Emily noticed and nudged Adriane. The two girls watched, trying not to laugh, as Kara bent over the stone, wrinkle-browed and frowning, a look of intense concentration on her face. Realizing she was being observed, she glared icily at the other girls.
What are you doing? Adriane asked incredulously. Resting, what's it to you? Kara got up and tossed the stone away in disgust.
One of the stones you find is bound to be special, Emily consoled her. Kara upended her backpack, pouring the stones on the ground.
None of these are any good. Face it, Barbie, Adriane said. The magic doesn't like you. Kara jumped to her feet, slinging her empty pack over her shoulder. That's it! Look, I'm Kara Davies, and you're a couple of weirdos. If you think for a minute I'm going any farther into these woods in my brand new sandals, you're as crazy as you look. I'm turning right around now and going to the mall where normal people go. She stalked off angrily.
Now what? Emily asked. We can't let her wander around the woods alone.
She'll be completely lost in about, 15 seconds, Adriane said. No! Kara's scream cut through the forest. Correction, 10, Adriane said. Come on. Emily and Adriane cut back in the direction of Kara's voice. They found her off the main trail on a smaller path, looking down into a ravine. What now? Did you see a bee? Adriane taunted. Kara pointed to a gully ahead of her. What's that? Emily looked, and her breath caught in her throat. With a cry, she slid down the incline. Emily, wait! Adriane called out. But all of Emily's senses were focused on the wounded creature that lay there, half buried under debris. Carefully, she cleared away the branches and wet leaves.
As if in a dream, she saw her stone pulsing wildly with blue light. She felt lightheaded.
Ariel!
She cried. The owl lay in the gully, her body torn and bruised almost beyond recognition. One wing was mangled and bent at an impossible angle. A sickly green glowed in spots on the owl's body. Carefully, Emily felt the owl's chest to see if she was breathing. She was alive, but just barely.
Ugh, that's disgusting, Kara said, peering down. I need something to carry her in, Emily called up. Leave it, it's dead, Kara said. Ah, hey! Adriane was pulling Kara's silk jacket off her shoulders. What are you doing? That's a DK, Kara protested. Throwing it down to Emily, Adriane said, If either of us had a jacket, believe me, we wouldn't want yours.
Emily gently wrapped the owl in Kara's jacket, then carefully carried her up out of the ravine. Is she all right? Adriane asked. No, we have to get her to Fell, quickly.
Let's go, this way.
Immediately, Adriane started down the small path. Emily followed, cradling Ariel in her arms. When Kara realized she was being left behind, she ran to catch up.
Where are you going? She demanded.
Adriane whirled around. We need to get this animal to where she can be healed. She's hurt bad, Emily said softly.
Well, lucky I found her, huh? Kara said. Then she paused. What's a Fell? Look, just remember your promise, Adriane said sharply. You tell no one about what we show you. I knew it! A secret place you weren't telling me about? Kara's eyes sparkled. I'm serious, promise, Adriane insisted. Okay, I promise, Kara said. Emily hurried along the trail, Adriane at her side. Kara was falling behind, her sandals no match for the logs and rocks that littered the path. Chapter 12. You should have seen Ozzy. He was so impressed. He was bragging to all the animals how he discovered you, a real healer. Adriane laughed. Emily was on the phone in her room listening to her friend. She had run right home with Ariel. Even if the owl seemed healed, she wasn't taking any chances. Only after her mom gave the owl a clean bill of health did Emily relax. I only helped Fell, and it was pretty scary, Emily said to Adriane, not wanting to talk about how scared it made her feel. How did you do with Kara? Adriane snorted. She blabbered the whole way back about how Ravenswood should be fenced off and locked up tight. Well, we had no choice. We had to take her to the glade, Emily said. Yeah, Adriane's voice trailed off. What's the matter? Emily prompted. That thing Fell did to Kara, Adriane started. What was it? Ozzy said it was a gift from the fairy mentals. A fairy map. A map of what? Emily asked. Maybe where the animals came from. Or where they're supposed to go. Emily remembered the word left in the dirt. Avalon. Something is going on here, Emily, and you and I are the only ones who know, Adriane said. And Kara, Emily reminded her. Yeah. Adriane paused. We have to do something before Barbie opens her big mouth. Like what? I think we should go and try and talk to the mayor ourselves. I don't know. We can say we're returning her jacket, Adriane suggested. I guess we can try, Emily said. Good. Meet me tomorrow 10 sharp at Town Hall. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She pictured Fell alone in the woods. Well, not really alone. She had to laugh when she thought about Ozzy, insisting on staying with the big creature to protect him. Poor Ozzy, so far from his home and the other animals, scared and lost in a strange world. Emily realized she was talking about creatures out of some dream, as if the old legends about the woods were turning real. Had magical animals been here before? Had humans and animals really worked together in the past? What was a fairy map, and why had Fell given it to Kara and not her? She felt a pang of jealousy. Not the first time someone was jealous of Kara, that was for sure. Whatever was going on, one thing was certain.
Her life had changed forever, and not just because she wasn't in Colorado anymore. Emily stared at the wondrous jewel in her hand. A stone of protection and healing, and she had found it, or had it found her? She clutched it tightly, as if it really could give her some measure of protection from her doubts and fears. What had happened today with Ariel terrified her. A door had been opened that she didn't want to, couldn't enter. There was no going back. Wasn't that what one of the fairy mentals had said? Was she ready to go forward? And where would that path lead? Emily sighed. Ozzy had told Adriane that Fell's fairy map was a gift to Kara. She looked at her jewel. Was this her gift? Quietly, she left her room and ran down to the pet palace. The cat was wide awake, pacing back and forth. She had been moved to the pet palace since she no longer needed constant care and attention. Emily sensed the cat's restlessness. Emily walked over and sat down next to her. Moonlight drifted through the window, bathing them both in pale silver light. They stared into each other's eyes. Emily held up her gemstone and ran it over the cat's mottled and sparse patches of fur. She moved it gently over the odd bumps on the animal's shoulders, trying to think healing thoughts. The stone sparkled softly in the moonlight. She visualized the scars vanishing, the mottled tufts turning to lustrous fur. She closed her eyes tightly and concentrated. She opened them and nothing. The cat looked exactly the same. She lifted her head and licked Emily on the cheek. Maybe healing Ariel had drained the crystal, or she needed Felonius to guide her. This is crazy. I can't do this. The cat stared at her. I'm sorry, I don't know what else to do. Emily broke down and hugged the cat, sobbing into her neck. The cat pulled away and turned to pick up something from her bed. When she turned back to Emily, she was holding a dusty orange stuffed lion. Emily took Mr. Snuffles from the cat's mouth. She could swear the cat was smiling at her. Taking and giving completes our circle. It's time to let go. Emily stared at the cat. Maybe she had helped heal it after all. There was something more she could do for it, she realized. She reached out to pet it one last time. We each have to find our own path, she said. Then she went to open the door to the outside. Moonlight danced in the doorway. A cool breeze ruffled Emily's curls. Have faith, healer. The magic is with you now and forever. Without a backward glance, the cat walked out into the night. Slowly, Emily closed the door and hugged Mr. Snuffles. Chapter 13. The sky was overcast as Emily navigated her bike into the bike rack by the town hall. The parking lot was full. There seemed to be an unusual amount of activity going on this morning. It seemed like everyone was rushing around. Something's up. Adriane was already at the front steps waiting for her. Come on. Together, the girls walked into the building and crossed the lobby to a desk where a stocky woman with big hair sat fielding phone calls. We'd like to talk to the mayor, please, Adriane announced. I'm afraid that's not possible, the big-haired lady replied. Why not? Adriane asked. First of all, he's not here. Second of all, he's not here. We can wait. Suit yourself, Miss Big Hair said. What's going on around here anyway? Emily asked. Haven't you heard? They caught the monster of Ravenswood. Emily's face went ashen. What? Adriane leaned forward. A fireman shuffled through to drop some papers on the front desk. Who caught what? Adriane pressed. It was a bear, the fireman said. Can you believe it? A big, purple bear. Bear? Emily looked at Adriane in horror. About time, Miss Big Hair said. If you ask me, that place should be shut down. Just stand over there if you want to wait. By the time she looked up, the girls were gone. Kara sat sunning in a lawn chair in her backyard. She had everything perfectly laid out within arm's reach. A bowl of chips and trail mix, ice-cold lemonade, suntan oils, and her CD case. Rose-tinted shades covered her eyes. and headphones covered her ears. She didn't see Emily and Adriane until they were practically standing right over her.
Hey, you're blocking my son, she complained.
Where is he? Emily demanded.
Kara pointed to her headphones. Can't hear you. Come back next century.
You told them where he was, Adriane accused. You promised you wouldn't tell, and you did. How could you?
Kara sat up and removed her headphones. Take it easy, Pocahontas. It's not hard to find a 20-story rock. They're getting a court order to bulldoze the whole place anyway. So go find somewhere else to play.
Ugh!
Adriane's eyes flashed with rage.
Kara, you saw what's going on out there, Emily said, trying to be reasonable. You saw all those animals.
I don't know what I saw, Kara replied, clearly uneasy. All I remember is the monster.
He's not a monster, he's our friend, Emily told her.
That figures, Kara answered.
That's it! Adriane advanced on Kara, her hands balled into fists. Bright gold fire suddenly flared from Adriane's bracelet. Kara's jaw dropped. How did you do that? Adriane stared at her gemstone. The stone pulsed with light.
I didn't do anything, she said, more to Emily than to Kara.
Emily turned slowly to Kara. Maybe you did something. Kara tried, but she couldn't hide her astonishment.
Yeah, right, she scoffed.
Emily held up her wrist. Both Kara and Adriane stared at the incredible crystalline flower that flickered with rainbow sparkles in the sunlight.
Emily, your stone,
Adriane started.
Amazing,
Kara finished. Belle did it, Emily said.
The purple bear gave you that?
Kara asked, her eyes wide. Emily moved the jewel closer to her. The stone flashed with blue fire. Emily backed away and the stone cooled.
You're making it do that,
Kara said, eyes glued to the startling gem. No, Emily said. You are. In the woods yesterday, Belle tried to give you something. A gift.
And you ruined it,
Adriane put in. Kara bit her lip.
And why would it give me a gift?
I think for some reason, you are part of this, Emily told her.
Part of what?
Kara asked slowly. Emily looked to Adriane. Felonius's magic, just like these stones, Adriane explained. Kara shook her head.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've...
She stopped as Stormbringer and Ozzy walked out from the gardens.
Ah!
Kara shrieked, knocking over the bowl of chips as she shrank back from the great wolf.
Keep that thing away from me!
Storm stood still and looked into Kara's eyes. The girl was mesmerized.
Do not be afraid.
Startled, Kara looked around. What? Who said that?
The magic is strong with you.
Ozzy looked up at Kara, studying her.
There's no such thing as magic, Kara said.
How do you explain him? Adriane pointed to Ozzy. Kara turned to Ozzy. The ferret was holding the bowl of trail mix in his paws.
These are delicious. Can I have some juice?
He asked her.
Plenty of toys do that stuff, Kara said uncertainly.
Come on, Emily, we don't need her. Adriane turned away, pulling Emily with her. Emily faced Kara and held up her bracelet again. Kara, Belle gave us his magic and now he needs our help. Are you in or out? Emily asked. Kara's eyes sparkled at the jewel. She focused back on Emily and looked over to Adriane, at the wolf and the ferret, all waiting for her. She scrunched her nose as if making an important decision. They took it to a warehouse at Millers Point Industrial Park. Chapter 14. Life is change, Emily's father had told her. Be ready and excited. Somehow she was neither. With Ozzy on her lap, she was seated next to Adriane on the Stonehill town bus headed toward Millers Point Industrial Park. It had been Kara's idea to take the bus. The blonde girl was seated a few rows in front of them, listening to Earl, the bus driver, drone on about how the mayor should improve the bus lanes. Ozzy's brown nose pressed against the window as he watched the farmlands sweep by. Emily turned to Adriane. "Do you think this is crazy?" "Not any crazier than running around the woods with a dangerous predator loose," Adriane answered with a wry smile.
It's not crazy to help our friend,
Ozzy said. "Why can't the fairy mentals stay with us, Ozzy?" Emily asked.
Their magic is bound to another world, Ozzy explained. They can't survive here for long.
Like Fel. Emily had to face the truth. Fel had limited time here.
I don't think he was supposed to use so much of his magic to heal those animals,
Ozzy said. "What is he supposed to do?" Adriane asked.
Seed your world with magic.
Then why did he heal those animals? Emily asked.
I think he did it for you, Emily.
The ferret was staring at her.
You are the healer.
He turned to Adriane.
And you are the warrior.
We're 12-year-old kids, Adriane reminded him.
I know, but the fairy mantles came to you, Ozzy replied. And you've heard Storm. I thought mist wolves were dangerous, but I was wrong. Storm carries memories of her kind that go back centuries. She knows the fairy mentals sent me to find 3 mages.
Adriane laughed. Great. If we're 2, who's the 3rd? Ozzy looked to the front of the bus where a bored Kara sat. Adriane flushed. Oh no, do not even go there. She's trying, Adriane, Emily said. Let's give her a chance. Adriane looked out the window. Forget it.
I could be wrong, of course, Ozzy said. Being a ferret wasn't part of the plan.
Maybe they disguised you, Emily suggested. An elf in Stonehill? That would get people talking, Adriane continued.
But why did they choose me? I wasn't magical as an elf, and I'm not special now,
Ozzy said with a hint of defeat.
I just want to go home.
Ozzy, whatever reason you're here, I'm glad that you are, Emily said. Adriane looked at Ozzy. Me too. Ozzy smiled a ferret smile. The bus pulled into the wide parking lot of the Millers Point Industrial Park. It covered about a square mile of buildings and landscaped parks. Behind the office buildings on the far side of the park was a row of warehouses. All right, we're here, Kara announced. A real Girl Scout, Adriane said under her breath. Where is he, Kara? Emily asked. In one of those warehouses out back until some UFO team or something comes to get it, Kara told them. But which one? I don't know, Kara replied. I just hope we got here in time, Adriane said. If it wasn't for me, you would still be walking, and you would have shown up in about 2 weeks, Kara fumed. All right, Kara, Emily intervened. You were right. It was a good idea to catch the bus. Let's go. The girls made their way along a mosaic pathway between the 2 main office buildings. They emerged on the other side onto an open green lawn with a small man-made lake, its water reflecting the orange and gold of the setting sun. A family of ducks quacked greetings as the girls passed. Ozzy rode in Emily's backpack as they marched down the road toward the semicircle of warehouses. How are we going to get back after we find him? Emily looked around. We'll figure something out, Adriane said. She didn't sound too sure either. Well, I have some magic of my own, Kara smirked. Oh? Adriane's eyebrows rose. Yeah, it's called a cell phone. Kara held up her little blue StarTAC. Emily stopped suddenly. Trouble. Adriane and Kara stopped and looked where she was pointing. Up around the bend was a guard gate, blocking the entrance to the warehouse section of the park. It was manned by security officers. Well, I guess this ends our little rescue expedition, Kara said. No way, Adriane said. A jeep was approaching the gate from one of the warehouses. Then we'll just walk through and tell the guards we're here to pick up the purple bear, Kara snickered. Good idea, Adriane said. She closed her eyes. Concentrating hard, she formed an image and locked it in her mind. Stormbringer, she whispered. Adriane's jewel pulsed with white gold light. Kara couldn't hide her amazement. A cloud of mist appeared, and the great silver wolf materialized. Stormbringer walked forward to greet the girls.
I heard your call, warrior.
Can you help us get past that gate without being seen? The wolf shimmered, as if radiating waves of heat. She seemed to expand, and then she was only soft gray-white mist. Kara's eyes went wide with disbelief.
Stay close together,
The mist wolf's voice said. Hey, watch it, Kara protested as Adriane pushed her up against Emily. The mist slowly settled around them. Slowly, they made their way up to the main gate. 2 guards sat in the gatehouse watching monitors, while a third paced outside. My ear itches, Kara complained, under the veil of mist. A small paw reached out and scratched Kara's ear. Eek! Shh, Emily repeated urgently. The jeep drove up and the gate began to swing open. Adriane tensed. Ready? The jeep drove past and the gate began to close. Go! Adriane gave Kara a push. She shuffled forward, trying to stay together. Emily looked out through the curtain of mist. It was working. The guards didn't even notice them. Ring, ring. The pacing guard stopped and pulled his cell phone from its holster. He held it to his ear, then shook it. Ring, ring. What is that? Adriane whispered in a panic. Hello? Kara said into her phone. Shh, keep moving, Emily said. The guard was looking around, obviously puzzled. Oh, hi, Heather! Kara covered the end of the phone. It's Heather, she whispered to the girls. Adriane pushed Kara forward as the gate swung closed behind them. Go, go, go! Oh, really? I love pink. How does it look? Adriane grabbed the phone from Kara's hand as they turned into an alley between the first 2 warehouses. This call is like so over, she said into the phone and hit the off button. That was like so rude, Kara objected. The mist lifted and the wolf reappeared. Wow, they didn't even see us, Kara exclaimed. Pretty cool. Adriane turned to Storm. Can you find Fel? The wolf sniffed the air and took off at a trot. The girls and Ozzy followed. They passed several warehouses and then Stormbringer led them into a dark alley. They were completely in shadows. The sun was almost gone. Adriane raced up the steps to a door in the side of the building and tried it. It's locked, she exclaimed. A dog barked and a faint light flashed out beyond the end of the alley. What do we do now? Kara asked. What about that window? Emily pointed to a small window partway up the side of the warehouse. No one can fit in there, Kara said.
I can,
said Ozzy. Okay, let's get him up there. Adriane turned to Kara. Bend over. No way! Emily looked back as a light flashed off the warehouse wall. Kara, this is no time for arguments. Kara, muttering angrily, knelt on the ground. Emily climbed up on her back.
Oh,
the blonde girl complained under the additional weight of Adriane, who hoisted herself up on top of Emily. Why do I have to be on the bottom? If we fall, you won't get hurt, Adriane explained, deftly balancing herself below the window ledge. Oh, good idea, Kara agreed. She wriggled to adjust her position and Adriane wobbled. Stay still! Adriane balanced herself. Ozzy, get up here. The ferret scampered over Kara and Emily and up into Adriane's arms. She hoisted him up and tried to push him onto the windowsill, but it was still too far. She swung her arm back and flung Ozzy up into the air, but the movement of her arm pulled her over. Whoa! Ozzy went flying as she came toppling down on Emily and Kara. They looked up. Ozzy was dangling from the windowsill by his front paws. They watched as he hoisted himself up and squeezed through the narrow opening of the window. Emily grinned. He made it. There was a crash, followed by a boom. The girls rushed to the door and waited. They heard the scampering of little feet across the floor, a few bumps, some thuds, and assorted args and doofs. Then silence. Emily looked at the other girls. Ozzy, are you all right?
yes!
What are you doing? Adriane asked.
I can't reach the door release.
Ozzy's muffled voice replied. Why don't you use your magic charms? Kara said sarcastically. Adriane turned to Emily. Let's see if we can lift him. You think? Emily looked doubtfully at her bracelet. Like when I made those trees move. Kara raised her eyebrows. Okay, what do I do? Emily asked. Concentrate really hard, Adriane said. Picture Ozzy floating up to the lock. Emily held her gem close to Adriane's, closed her eyes, and concentrated as hard as she could. Ooh! Ozzy exclaimed from behind the closed door. What's happening? Adriane asked.
I'm on my tiptoes! Try harder!
Ozzy called back. Flashlight beams bounced around the entrance to the alley. Hurry! The guards are coming! Kara pushed at their shoulders. Stop it! I can't concentrate! Adriane shot back. Anyone there? A guard called out. Hurry it up! Kara pushed harder at the girls. A flashlight beam swept the alley. Would you quit shoving? Adriane snapped, turning back to Kara. Kara's hand slipped off Adriane's shoulder and landed on the two jewels. The stones exploded with a flash of light.
Whoa!
Thump! Crash! Something inside slammed against the ceiling and came crashing to the floor.
Oh!
Ozzy's voice sounded wobbly. Sorry, Kara said, pulling her hand back. A little more subtle, Emily suggested. Kara lightly touched the stones. They pulsed with bright light as Emily and Adriane concentrated on floating Ozzy up to the doorknob.
Oopsie!
Ozzy was up. The latch clicked open and the girls tumbled inside. Storm padded in behind them. We did it! Emily exclaimed. Looking around the dark room, she held up her jewel and willed it to shine. She smiled as a pale blue light spilled over the entryway. Adriane added a soft golden glow. 3 darkened hallways ran off in separate directions. This is nuts, Kara shook her head. We're breaking and entering and using illegal magic stuff. Magic is not illegal, Adriane shot back. I bet it is too. How come the president doesn't have this? Shh, quiet, Emily ordered. Can you two please stop arguing for 2 minutes? Let's just find Fel and get out of here. Storm sniffed and headed down the middle hallway. The hallway led to what looked like a large storage area. In the dim light, Emily could make out a ramp up to a loading dock on the far side. The large sliding garage door was shut. So that's how they got him in here, she thought. Fel! Emily called out in a whisper. Are you in here? Something massive moved in the darkness. Emily sidestepped, keeping close to the wall. Well, is it in here or... Kara stepped forward, screamed, and disappeared. Emily looked wildly around. Kara! What happened? Adriane moved in behind Emily. Emily and Adriane inched forward. In front of them was a huge pit. Their glowing jewels cut swaths of light across the wide space. Fel lay on his back, on the floor, with Kara standing on his belly. Hey, look what I found, she said. 2 gigantic eyes opened, blinked, then stared up at the startled girls. Fel, are you all right? Emily noticed the steps and quickly made her way down. Did you find him? Ah! Ozzy bolted into the room, but his momentum took him right over the edge of the drop. He bounced up Fel's belly and looked into a giant eye. Fel! Thank goodness! Fel reached out giant paws and engulfed the ferret. Gaff! Was all Ozzy could say. Adriane pointed toward the loading dock door. We can get him out that way. Emily gently touched Felonious. She could sense his weakness. She pushed the fear back. We've got to get you out of here. Together, the 3 girls got Fel up and onto his feet. He was frighteningly light for something so enormous. Holding Ozzy under one arm, he shuffled along as they pushed and pulled him up the ramp toward the loading dock. Adriane started hitting every button she could find to open the big door. Doesn't this place, have any alarms? Kara asked. With a loud whoosh, The door started to open. A horn blasted through the night. It rose to a crescendo, then started again. A second horn blared across the compound, followed by a third. "Does that answer your question?" Adriane said. "Let's go," Emily ordered. They pushed Fel out the door and down the exit ramp. Spotlights flared, flooding the compound.
What are we going to do?
Kara screamed. Everywhere they turned, searchlights skimmed the ground, waiting to trap them in bright light. Men were yelling and dogs were barking. "Stay where you are!" a loud voice shouted over a megaphone.
We are in such major trouble, Kara wailed. Hurry, come on, Fel, we have to run,
Emily pleaded, trying to push him to move faster.
"This is all your fault," Kara screamed. "You forced me to come here. I'm gonna be grounded for like 5 years.
"You were the one who got him caught in the first place," Adriane screamed back.
"Stop it! Stop it!"
Emily shouted. Her gem exploded, sending shafts of blue light shooting into the night. Spotlights burst to pieces and went dark. Sirens blared in the distance. The guards dodged the falling debris and released the dogs. With a snarl, they leaped into the air and charged. Stormbringer's frightening growl made the girls turn. The wolf was crouched and poised to attack. 3 black dogs, barking wildly and baring vicious teeth, were running straight for them. Adriane raised her stone. "No!" Emily grabbed Adriane's arm. "We can't hurt them!" The girls huddled together, shaking against Fel's side.
"Hey you, ever seen a talking ferret?"
The dog skidded to a halt, turned, and sprang up the loading dock ramp. A small, furry creature leapt onto the rope pulley above the ramp, out of range of their snapping teeth. "Ozzy!" Emily screamed. Fel blinked great, sad eyes. Kara shoved herself forward.
"Security!" she called. "I'm Kara Dame."
Adriane clapped her hand over Kara's mouth. "Are you crazy?" she hissed. Fel's huge arms came down around the girls.
"To be here with you two? Yes."
Suddenly, Kara looked down. Her feet were no longer on the ground. Fel was rising up into the air. Kara screamed. "Hold on!" Adriane grabbed onto Fel's fur.
"Ozzy!"
Emily cried, struggling to break free of Fel's grasp. The dogs barked and jumped, trying to grab the ferret from the swinging rope. Storm shimmered into mist and snaked past the dogs. They looked in confusion at the mist. Ozzy swung the rope over the dogs and jumped. He skidded down the ramp and ran for his life. The dogs barked and bounded after him.
"Wait for me!"
Ozzy burst down the alley, inches in front of the snapping jaws of a black Doberman. Emily slid down Fel's leg. Adriane reached down and grabbed onto Emily's right arm. Emily extended her left arm, reaching down. "Hurry, Ozzy!" Adriane yelled. The dogs would have him in seconds. Emily slid right to the edge of Fel's giant foot.
"Emily!"
Kara shrieked. "I got her." Adriane had hold of Emily's leg. Emily stretched her arm out, fingers clasping. "Jump, Ozzy!" she yelled. Ozzy closed his eyes and leaped. Emily caught his paw and pulled him into her arms. Below, guards and dogs grew smaller and smaller as Fel rose above the industrial park and drifted into the night. The sky was ablaze with the orange golden light of the full moon. Felonius glided silently on his back, like a great sky whale high above the countryside. "Don't you ever do something like that again!" Emily squeezed the ferret in a hug and handed him to Adriane.
"That was the bravest thing I've ever seen."
She hugged him too. "You're okay, Ozzy." Ozzy opened his arms and reached for Kara. She scrunched her nose at him. "Nice job, ferret." With a quick glance to make sure Emily and Adriane weren't watching, she kissed Ozzy. "You ever tell anyone I kissed a ferret, I'll have you stuffed." Ozzy winked.
"Our secret."
The girls and Ozzy sat on Fel's belly, looking out in total amazement. No one knew what to say. They were flying, being carried through the sky by a creature made of magic. Below, the streetlights and houses of Stonehill looked like exquisite toys.
"Hey!"
Kara exclaimed suddenly, leaning over to the side.
I didn't know the Feltners had a pool, and they never invited me over.
She sat back, crossed her arms, and pouted.
Emily and Adriane exchanged glances and started to laugh. After a minute, Kara began to laugh with them. Howls of laughter spilled into the night as they glided peacefully over the treetops, leaving the lights of the town to fade in the distance. Behind them, a dark winged shadow rose above the orange-gold moon. It closed in for the kill. Chapter 15. Fel drifted on a sea of clouds. Kara raised her arms, her long hair furling in the breeze like a golden flag. Adriane searched the dark forests that appeared and disappeared between the low clouds. Emily was studying Fel. He had been so weak back at the warehouse. How much magic was he using to fly? What would happen if he ran out? Would he come apart like those whirlwinds of dirt and twigs? She peered anxiously over his side.
We have to get him home,
Ozzy told her, seeing the worry on her face.
How, Ozzy? She asked. We have to find that portal and open it.
How much longer does he have? Ozzy looked down. His silence was answer enough. Kara was hanging over Fel's side.
Look, an arrow!
That's not an arrow. That's the rocking stone, Adriane scoffed. Emily looked again. Kara was right. From this height, the ancient stone looked like a skinny finger reaching out or pointing. The legend of the standing stone, Emily said. Adriane and Kara looked at her. I found it on the web. The rocking stone is supposed to point to a spirit door.
Or a portal,
Ozzy said. All four looked down. It looks like it's pointing to that clearing, Adriane exclaimed. The glade? Emily asked. No, just beyond, to the left. Out of nowhere, a dark shape swept past, sending Fel careening to the right. What was that? Adriane asked nervously. I don't want to find out. Hurry, Fel, Emily called out. Fel turned towards the rocking stone and swooped into dense clouds. For a moment, a shadow was visible against a cloud. Something huge with gigantic wings. What was that? Kara pointed. Emily and Adriane looked, but it was gone, swallowed by the clouds. They peered around anxiously. Hurry, Fel, Emily called. The clouds swept past, then parted like a curtain. The monster hung in the sky before them. Fel was on a collision course with 2 red-hot demon eyes and rows of razor teeth. The monster roared thunder, and black fire erupted from its mouth and exploded against Fel's shoulders. Kara screamed as Fel dropped like a rock, billowing black flames. Wind whipped Emily's hair into her face.
Fel!
Her jewel flared blue and bathed Fel in a blanket of light, extinguishing the black flames. Fel dived low and pulled up in a sweeping arc, careening toward the trees at an alarming speed. Left! Adriane yelled, leaning hard. Right! Kara shrieked, pulling in the opposite direction. The girls flattened themselves against Fel's body as he swept up and over the forest canopy. Branches and leaves scraped his back.
We're gonna crash!
Kara yelled. Adriane! Emily shouted. She reached across Kara to clasp Adriane's hand. Sparkles ran across Kara's body and the stones glowed bright. We need to slow Fel down. I got it. Adriane closed her eyes. Brilliant rainbow light arced from the gems and spread into a canopy above them. A parachute! Emily gripped Adriane's hand as Fel's descent slowed. Hold on, Adriane yelled. Kara put her head down and closed her eyes. Emily and Adriane held the rainbow tight. Ozzy wedged himself under the girls. Fel soared past the rocking stone. With a final effort, he skirted the treetops and went down, bouncing hard on the ground. Emily's teeth ground together with a jolt. The rainbow burst apart, leaving a sparkling trail as Fel's body dug a long, shallow furrow in the grass. he came to a stop at the edge of an open field. Adriane was sprawled sideways across Fel's chest. Kara was hanging upside down halfway down his side. Ozzy was stuck under Fel's paw. Emily rolled over and hit the ground. "Are you all right?" She helped Adriane and Kara slide down. Ozzy jumped off to examine Fel. "Thank you for flying Air Fel." Kara rubbed her head. "Help him up," Emily told them. Together they pushed Felonius to a sitting position. The back of his head and shoulders were glowing with the evil green poison. It was eating away at him, spreading down his back. Parts of him were becoming transparent.
Emily, you have to help him,
Ozzy pleaded. Fel opened his eyes and looked at Emily. "Tell me what to do," she begged. Fel's paw was blinking in and out. Emily raised her stone and concentrated. The gem flashed blue light as she pushed hard with every ounce of will she had. She felt the dark power of the black fire. It was overwhelming, threatening to crush her. "Help me!" Emily felt her face grow wet from sweat and tears. Adriane raised her stone. It glowed hot white gold. "Kara!" Adriane yelled. Kara stood between them and touched both stones. Golden fire swirled up her arm from Adriane's gem. Kara closed her eyes. Her long blonde hair flared as the magic passed through her, down her other arm and into Emily's stone. Blue and gold magic collided, and the green light flashed from Emily's wrist and streamed out to cover Fel. She felt her heart beating too fast. She was afraid it would explode as she raced over the chasm, falling into the void of darkness. And then she felt another heartbeat. Adriane's, strong, pure, and Kara's, steady, certain, pulling her back. Fel began to glow, blue and gold, matching the stones, and the darkness fell away. The light faded. Fel blinked his eyes. The green poison was gone. But he was still fading in and out. Emily's throat tightened, and she fought back tears. They had stopped the poison, but it was too late. She had failed again, and now she was losing Felonius. "What was that thing?" Adriane asked.
"A manticore,"
Ozzy said.
"It's bad, real bad."
"What does it want from us?" Kara asked.
"Manticores track magic,"
Ozzy said. "Why didn't it get Fel before?" Kara asked.
"Maybe Fel's magic was protecting him, hiding him,"
Ozzy explained.
"Fel doesn't have any more magic,"
Emily cried.
"But you do,"
Ozzy said. The treetops swayed as if blown by a sudden wind. "Hey, what time is it anyway?" Kara asked in a rush. "I've got a 10 o'clock curfew. I gotta go." "We need you, Kara," Emily told her. "You do?" Kara asked. "We do?" Adriane echoed. "Every time she's near these stones, they go crazy." "What do we do now?" Kara asked. "We have to send Fel home, back through the portal," Emily said. "How are we going to do that?" Kara asked.
"Hey, come back here!"
Ozzy yelled. The girls turned to see Fel slowly lumbering across the field. A few rainbow puff flowers popped up behind him, but they withered and collapsed into dust. The fairy creature's skin was translucent, a ghostly haze in the moonlight. His body seemed to be drifting apart like Stormbringer turning into mist. "What's he doing?" asked Adriane.
"Trying to make magic, but he's too weak,"
Ozzy answered. "Our stones. Concentrate on helping Fel," Emily said. Emily and Adriane stood next to Kara and held their bracelets in the air. The stones began to glow as Fel raised his arms. An electrical burst of wild magic leaped from the stones, startling the girls. Fel swirled the strands of blue and gold magic in the air. He wove the magic into a circular shape, a web, with a bright silver glow in the center. The shape became a 3-dimensional ball that floated in the air in front of him. Ozzy jumped up and down.
"The fairy map!"
The glowing orb grew brighter and brighter. Fel collapsed to the ground, growing dimmer and dimmer. The twinkling web floated like a glittering beach ball over to the girls. Emily tried to grab it, but it danced away. Adriane jumped for it, but it eluded her grasp. It settled over Kara. "Take it, Kara," Adriane said. Ozzy sniffed the air. Something smelled foul. Pinpoints of light reflected over Kara's face as she reached out. A blast of wind tore it from her grasp. The manticore landed with a ground-shaking crunch that rumbled like thunder across the field. Even hunched over, it was massive. It slowly turned its head and slitted demon eyes looked straight at the girls. Adriane's mouth froze open. All the color drained from Kara's face. The monster towered over them. The lower part of its body looked like a lion. The upper part resembled some bizarre ape beast, with arms muscled like steel cords. Its head was grotesque, with long, dripping teeth and a blood-red mouth. Its eyes flared red fire. Gigantic wings unfurled behind its back as it roared. The sound was deafening. There was nowhere to run. Embracing the swirling ball of stars, its horrible mouth moved grotesquely as it spoke.
How could I have been so stupid?
Ozzy cried.
It was after the fairy map!
If that's what you want, then leave us alone, Adriane cried.
What I want is not your concern, human,
it replied, its mouth twisting into a sickening smile.
The fairy creature is dying. It was just a matter of time before it gave up the map.
Emily felt heat at her wrist. The jewel on her bracelet was still pulsing, blazing with light. Adriane felt it too. Her stone was also glowing. The monster stared suspiciously at the gems and growled low in its throat.
My queen will never allow humans to control magic. Give me those stones,
it roared.
I would highly recommend you do what it says.
Ozzy piped up nervously from behind the girls. Fine, let it have them, Emily said. She tried to take off her bracelet, but couldn't. It's stuck. The more she tried to move it, the more solidly it seemed to cling to her wrist. Emily, I can't move mine, Adriane said, panic rising in her voice. Me either. The monster reached forward with hands the size of chairs and claws glowing with green poison. Adriane was desperately pulling and twisting at her bracelet. It won't come off! Give it the stupid stone! Kara shrieked. She reached to yank it from Adriane's wrist, and the tiger-eye stone exploded with golden fire. Jagged lightning pierced the ground in front of them. The girls stared at the smoky fissure. The monster stepped back, red eyes flashing dangerously. Then, it leaped at the girls. Something flashed past them and slammed into the creature with a sickening thud. "Storm!" Adriane cried. The monster staggered as the great wolf snarled and lunged for its throat. Grabbing the wolf, the beast twisted her head back, trying to rip it from her neck. The ball of stars floated in the air and bounced lightly away. Adriane lunged forward. Adriane, no! Emily grabbed Adriane and pulled her back. Stormbringer's teeth raked through the monster's arm as she leaped free to rip at its leg, trying to unbalance it. The manticore whirled and knocked the wolf to the ground, pinning her under a massive foot. With a roar, it smashed a razor-clawed fist into her. Stormbringer's howl echoed into the night as she burst apart in a haze of mist and vanished. Storm! Tears streaming down her face, Adriane screamed and tried to pull out of Emily's grasp. No! Emily shrieked. She and Adriane struggled, and the two bracelets smashed together. Fire erupted from the stones as blinding wild magic flew out in all directions at once. A bolt blasted into a tree, splitting it in two. The monster bellowed with fury. Kara clutched at Adriane and Emily. Magic fire streamed from the jewels, arcing into the night sky. Try and hold it, Adriane called out. I can't, Emily cried. Stay together, all of us, Adriane ordered. Kara hung on to Adriane and Emily as sparks of power raced over her to fuel the magic fire. Adriane and Emily swung the stream of fire like a bat. It came around hard, smacking the manticore, knocking it across the field. The creature curled in upon itself and fell to the ground. Wild lightning zigzagged erratically all around them.
I can't control it!
Emily yelled. The air wrenched, the ground twisted, the sky cracked, and the portal opened. It was an immense, empty space, hanging in the air just off the ground. Trying to see through it was like trying to see through a thick fog. They could just make out a web of glowing lines, stars winking in complex patterns.
You did it!
Ozzy shouted. Wow! Kara stared into the endless void of the magic web.
Hurry, get Fel up!
Ozzy was pushing at Fel's side. The girls rushed over and gently helped Fel to his feet. He was so light that they had a hard time grabbing onto him.
Hold on, Fel, please,
Emily called. You're almost home. The web of stars twisted into a sparkling tunnel. They pushed Fel toward it. He floated into the portal and was gone. Emily and Ozzy looked at each other. Go, Ozzy. Take care of him. Ozzy faced the doorway that would take him home. The twisting tunnel was already getting smaller. He looked back at the girls.
Go, Ozzy!
Emily yelled.
Before the portal closes again!
Ozzy leaped after Fel and vanished.
We love you!
Emily called. A rush of hot wind whipped the girls' hair and clothes. They clutched one another in terror as the manticore returned and swooped in to land beside the portal. Fel's twinkling ball of stars was cradled in its huge clawed hands. The girls backed away. The creature held up the sparkling ball.
I will be rewarded for this prize, though I did enjoy the hunt and the animals were amusing sport.
It grinned wickedly, then turned red-hot eyes on Emily. Emily shrank back from the intense gaze, and her gem cooled to a flicker.
You have deceived yourself.
The red eyes were hypnotic, and Emily felt herself falling into darkness.
Magic cannot change what you really are. You are weak and helpless and doomed to failure.
No! Emily cried out. She held up her gemstone. I am a healer. Adriane raised her stone in the air. Kara stood between them, outstretched hands touching each of the jewels. Moon silver blazed through her body to join the growing glow of blue-green and sun gold.
And no one messes with our friends,
Emily shouted as the magic built into an inferno of unearthly fire. Fear flashed in the monster's eyes. Blinding light streamed out of the gemstones and hammered into the manticore. Still clutching the fairy map, it fell backward into the portal. The mist closed over it. The twisting tunnel vanished as the web of stars glowed brighter and began to expand, spreading like an immense spiderweb over the entire field. The more it spread, the thinner it became until nothing was left but a bright star hanging in the air where the portal had been. It twinkled and winked out. The clearing was still and quiet. Stormbringer came padding across the grass. Adriane ran to her, hugging the wolf and burying her face in the thick fur.
Storm, I thought I'd lost you,
she wept. Exhausted, Emily sank to the ground, covering her face.
Ozzy did it. He got home. That's all he ever wanted,
she said quietly. He was one brave ferret, Adriane said.
And kinda cute, too,
Kara added.
I'm gonna miss him so much,
Emily cried.
Gee, you think I was already dead?
The girls whirled around. The ferret was standing right behind them.
Ozzy!
Emily got up and ran to the ferret, picking him off the ground in a sweeping hug.
What happened? She asked. We thought you went home. And miss all this excitement? With all the trouble you get into, who do you think is going to look after you three?
But I thought you wanted to go home, Emily said.
I did. And here I am.
Ozzy smiled. We lost the fairy map, Adriane said. Ozzy shrugged.
Together, we'll find another way.
But what if the monster comes back? Kara asked.
It got what it wanted, but the fairy mentals also got something they wanted.
All three girls looked at him.
What? You.
Chapter 16. Welcome to the Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve, Gran said politely. The group gathered on the great lawn behind the manor had been oohing and awing over the expanse of gardens with their beautiful fountains and sculptures. Everyone turned expectantly to Gran. The entire town council was there. Mrs. Charday, on behalf of the town council, I'd like to thank you for inviting us to this remarkable place, Mayor Davies said formally. Beasley Winder scowled, looking around as if she expected a wild animal to jump out of a bush. And of course, our appreciation goes to Dr. Allison from the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. Standing next to Emily's mom, the CDC health official waved. He was a tall, handsome man. Emily and Adriane stood next to Gran. Kara was not there. Since the bizarre events 2 weeks earlier, they hadn't seen or heard a peep out of her. The Ravenswood Preserve has been a safe haven for animals for more than 100 years, Gran said. My granddaughter, Adriane, and her friend Emily will take you on a tour. Hiking is a bit difficult for me, she added with a small smile. That's our cue, Adriane whispered as they stepped forward. Hi, everyone. If you'll all follow me, we'll begin the tour out back here across the great lawn. The group followed the girls across the lawn to the maze garden. On the other side of the hedges, a family of miniature deer watched them. Ooh, tiny deer, one of the women exclaimed. Can we pet them? Another asked. Yes, they're very tame. Adriane handed around some small bags of animal feed. The group looked to Dr. Allison. It's quite all right, the CDC official assured them. These deer are perfectly healthy. The crowd gathered around to pet and feed the deer. Mrs. Windsor stood to the side, remarking loudly about how easily these lawns could be transformed into the back 9 holes of a golf course. Fellow councilman Sid Stewart nodded enthusiastically. Ronif popped his head out of a hedge behind Emily. How's it going? The Quiffle asked. Emily pushed the Quiffle's head back down in the bush. What are you doing? You're supposed to be waiting with the others. Everyone wants to know what's happening, said the bush. Fine. Now get back and make sure the others stay put, Emily whispered. The Quiffle skirted away through the bush. One of the branches poked Beasley Windor's behind. Startled, she scowled. Emily giggled as the group followed Adriane into a sculpture-filled water garden where peacocks strolled between the fountains, displaying their resplendent feathers. Everyone oohed and awed, and Emily began to think they could really win them over. Oh, look! Someone cried, heads turned skyward. An incredible owl was perched atop a tall fountain. Emily winked, and Ariel winked back. Spreading her magnificent wings, the owl took off. She glided in slow, perfect circles over the heads of the amazed group and came to land on Emily's arm. How'd I do? Just wonderful. Emily kissed the owl's head and smiled at the astonished onlookers. Well, Miss Fletcher, you certainly have a way with these animals, the mayor said. Emily beamed. Her name is Ariel. She's a snowy owl, very rare. Ariel looked at the humans with huge, sparkling eyes. The group looked to the CDC official. He laughed and gave a thumbs up. Everyone crowded around Emily for a chance to pet the owl. On the way back to the manor house, the group buzzed with excitement. Beasley Windor was loudly suggesting the perfect place for the front 9 when she stopped in mid-sentence. In the middle of the lawn, a large silver wolf sat staring at her with golden eyes. Beasley Windor pointed. Uh-huh. See? A dangerous animal. Adriane walked over and patted the wolf. Please, don't be frightened, she told the crowd. I'd like you all to meet Stormbringer. She lives here with us at the preserve. We take care of her, but she really takes care of us. She smiled. Incredible, someone said. I never knew such creatures lived out here, another commented. She's very friendly and loves children. Adriane ruffled the wolf's fur. All heads turned to Dr. Allison. He walked up and patted the great wolf.
Certainly seems healthy, he declared, and obviously very well people-trained.
Storm stood admirably still, allowing everyone to pet and admire her. Adriane hugged her. I love you. You're the best, she whispered. I'd rather be running with you through the forests.
Fantastic,
Mayor Davies exclaimed, taking in a deep breath of the crisp late summer air.
I'd forgotten how invigorating being out here felt. That's all well and good, Mrs. Windor stated, but what about the woods? How do we know it's truly safe out there? There have been no attacks in the last 2 weeks, the mayor responded. No reports of anything unusual, and Dr. Allison has personally checked these animals.
Carolyn stepped forward. I have seen no signs of anything that would be cause for shutting down this preserve. Dr. Allison spoke up.
Frankly, I haven't seen a trace of disease or toxins. Of course, something like that could still be lurking. You see?
Mrs. Windor interrupted triumphantly.
Excuse me, the CDC man continued firmly. Dr. Fletcher and I both agree that it could have been a diseased animal responsible for the attacks, but I found no evidence of anything here that might pose a danger to public health. My recommendation would be to watch and wait. If anything further is detected, Dr. Fletcher will contact me. But for now, I'd say that you have a one-of-a-kind treasure that the whole town should be proud of. As far as the CDC is concerned, Ravenswood Wildlife Preserve gets a clean bill of health.
Yes! Emily burst out as she and Adriane high-fived.
Thank you, Dr. Allison, Beasley Windor stepped forward. We're all very relieved at your report. However, the issue still remains. These animals can live anywhere. What the town needs is income, not animals. We need to put this to a vote, and I vote for the redevelopment of this land into Stonehill Golf Course and Country Club. She has a point, Sid Stewart said.
Emily's heart sank.
Oh no. Adriane kicked a stone. I knew it. Nothing ever works out.
Aw, you girls break a nail? They turned around to find Kara standing there.
Kara, Emily said.
Oh, of course you had to come and cast your vote for the country club, Adriane said snidely.
Well, if we get one, I know I won't be seeing you there, Kara shot back. Adriane fumed.
Kara fumed right back at her.
Mrs. Windor, Mayor Davies said, before we vote, I have a proposition for Mrs. Charday.
Everyone looked at the mayor. He pointed to Kara.
My daughter Kara has suggested we open the preserve for tours, to give people a chance to see and learn about the animals, just like it was years ago.
Not a bad idea, someone said. Emily and Adriane looked at Kara. I told you I could talk Daddy into anything, Kara said nonchalantly.
What do you say, Mrs. Charday? The mayor asked.
Gran, standing with crossed arms, shook her head. She started to say no, but stopped herself when she looked at Emily, Adriane, and Kara. Her expression relaxed and her eyes twinkled.
On one condition.
Name it, the mayor asked warily. We'll allow the estate to be open to the public in exchange for the town's support and protection of the preserve and its inhabitants.
Agreed, the mayor said.
And, Gran continued, you will allow us to apply for official federal landmark and wildlife sanctuary status.
That's 2 conditions, but I think that will fly, the mayor smiled.
Wow, Emily said. Mayor Davies stepped forward.
All in favor of trying out the preserve as our new town project, say aye.
A resounding chorus of ayes came from the crowd.
All those not in favor, say nay.
Everyone looked to Beasley Windor. Her mouth flapped open and closed, but she kept silent.
Done.
The mayor turned to Gran, a smile on his face and his hand extended.
I think we have a deal.
Gran shook his hand.
Emily's heart did a flip.
Adriane, landmark status. That means no one can ever shut this place down again. She turned to Kara. Kara, I can't believe it. You are amazing.
Yeah, that's great, Kara. Adriane looked down at her boots.
Yeah, it is. Excuse me. Kara went to join her father.
Congratulations! Mrs. Windor had moved in front of Emily and Adriane.
Thank you, Emily said. Mrs. Windor bent in close.
Your little show and tell didn't fool me, Missy. Something is going on out there, and I'm going to find out what.
She turned and stormed away. Mayor Davies had his arm around Kara's shoulders.
I'd like to officially appoint Kara as the mayor's liaison to the new Ravenswood Preservation Society.
Emily and Adriane looked at each other.
The what?
The council members applauded and Kara beamed.
Thank you,
Kara said, flashing her dazzling smile over the crowd. I have lots of ideas, starting with our first fundraising party.
Marvelous,
exclaimed a councilwoman. The crowd buzzed around Kara. Emily's mind was racing.
We could set up a website, she spoke up, so people all around could learn about the preserve and about wildlife conservation.
A website! Excellent!
The mayor's smile was growing wider.
We'd certainly link to it from the Chamber of Commerce website, a council member added. It would be a real tourist attraction.
Adriane dragged Emily away from the crowd.
Are you crazy? What are you talking about? Websites? How are we going to do that? How are we going to learn about all this?
She held up her stone.
With her around.
What do you think of our nifty club? Kara bounded over. Of course, I'll be president.
Club? This isn't the Girl Scouts, Adriane burst out.
Adriane, think, Emily said. It's the perfect setup to learn about the magic.
Adriane was still mad. You don't even have a stone, she reminded Kara.
Kara stared at the girl's jewels. Oh, yeah? And another thing.
What now? Adriane asked.
I need my own jewel.
It's a good start,
the mayor was saying to the others. He waved his arm over to Emily, Adriane, and Kara.
And we've got a great team here to supervise.
And it has to be big and sparkly like a diamond. Kara smiled a dazzling smile at Adriane.
Why don't I just get out the magic carpet and we'll fly around and find one?
Adriane suggested sarcastically. You got one? I need that too. Emily had to laugh. Kara and Adriane were from such different worlds. If they could ever work things out, they might actually make a great team. She looked across at the woods. She thought about how far she had come from that girl she left behind, 2,500 miles across the country, and what she had lost along the way. But Emily realized she had also found something. She was a healer, and healers found hope. There was so much to learn, a future so full of possibilities. Maybe Kara could find a magic stone of her own. Maybe Ozzy could find a way back into his real body. She looked at Adriane, so full of fire. A warrior. Maybe she would find her true path. The mystery of the web and the fairy map danced across her mind. What roads would it take her down? She thought of Fel and hoped he was safe. Maybe it was possible there existed a place where dreams came true. A place of magic where all creatures were safe. Was that what Avalon was? She looked at her jewel. A soft aqua glow pulsed briefly. She smiled and looked back at her friends. Emily was no longer afraid of her future. Wherever it may lead, she knew she wouldn't be going there alone.